Chapter 772. Yun Sheng glanced at Lan. The latter's expression didn't change, as if she had understood. Yun Sheng thought to herself that the older the ginger, the spicier it was. Sister Lan was right. Before Yun Sheng came to ask Lu Tongtian for 100 million gold coins, Sister Lan had reminded Yun Sheng that if Lu Tongtian didn't have enough gold coins on him, he could use his own items to exchange for it. Lan had entered the continent's magic elite camp earlier than Yun Sheng. She knew that Lu Tongtian might not have that much money to repay his debt, but he had been in the continent's magic elite camp for so long. His results in the blood purge were outstanding, and he had entered the magic forest many times. He must have a lot of high-level and super magic in his hands. Yun Sheng didn't know about this, but Sister Lan knew more than Yun Sheng. That was why she had reminded Yun Sheng to use magic to replace gold coins. Yun Sheng had just broken through to become a sky mage. She was also the boss of Little Ci Entong and the deputy leader of the Heaven Hunting Corps. Gold coins were nothing to her. On the contrary, high-level magic, especially super magic, would be more useful for Yun Sheng's magic training in the future. As expected, Lu Tongtian had no choice but to use his own items to repay the gold coins. Then I won't be polite. Yun Sheng said that she was embarrassed, but her hands had already started to search Lu Tongtian's storage ring. With a glance, she found a large number of magical beast soul stones, magic tools, and some well-preserved magic fruits. Lu Tongtian was indeed a leveling up expert. Not only did he participate in the blood purge of the Duqian blood beast world, he also went out to accept various missions. His storage ring was very rich. However, Yun Sheng was no longer the same as before. Her vision was now much higher than before. After checking, she roughly picked out a few high-level magic spells and some magic materials. Together they were worth about 30 million gold coins. This was still not enough to repay the 100 million gold coins. Senior brother Lu, what should I do? These things of yours are not suitable for me. Looks like I'll have to expose your information to Chi-san. He said that he's willing to pay a high price for the exclusive rights to everything I've seen and heard in the Duqian blood beast world. Yun Sheng frowned. What kind of person was Chi-san? He was the #1 gossip king in the elite camp. If the news reached his mouth, wouldn't the entire elite camp know about it? Lu Tongtian's face was so dark that water could be wrung out. Yun Sheng, don't go too far. Lu Tongtian glared fiercely at Yun Sheng, looking like he was going to tear her to pieces at any moment. Hey, senior martial brother Lu, hurry up and think again. Do you still have anything valuable on you? It's getting late, I'm rushing to deliver the pills to Yi Baiming. As soon as Yun Sheng mentioned Yi Baiming, Lu Tongtian immediately became listless. It was said that Yi Baiming's strength had greatly improved after this trial. Even Lu Tongtian didn't dare to offend him. Yun Sheng looked at Lu Tongtian's appearance and felt secretly pleased. The title of Night Fox was indeed useful. Lu Tongtian hesitated. Slowly he took out a cold jade box and threw it to Yun Sheng. This thing should be more than enough to repay the remaining 70 million gold coins. Take it and scram. Don't be an eyesore here. Seeing Lu Tongtian's mouth twitch when he took out the item, as if his gout was acting up, Yun Sheng knew that the item in the cold jade box was no small matter. Cold jade boxes were usually used to store precious medicinal herbs or elixirs. As soon as the box was opened, Yun Sheng saw a gray magic fruit. This magic fruit was completely different from any of the magic fruits that Yun Sheng had seen before. Even with her Shinnong eyes, Yun Sheng couldn't tell what it was. Gu Feng came forward to take a look and pinched it. Senior martial brother Lu, don't bully us because we're young. This magic fruit is worth 70 million gold coins? Aren't you cheating us? Brat, what are you talking about? I, Lu Tongtian, have never cheated anyone. Don't spout nonsense if you don't know what's good for you. That's a magic fruit, and it's a petrified fruit that's more than 3,000 years old. Lu Tongtian was already depressed that he was forced to hand over the magic fruit. Let me see. Lan also came forward to take a look at the magic fruit in the cold jade box. Ordinary magic fruits could only last for 2 to 3 years in a jade box. However, the petrified fruit was different. It fell from the magic tree for some reason and was buried underground. It was well preserved and wouldn't rot even after thousands of years. Generally speaking, the petrified fruit was very rare. Lan had entered the magic forest many times, but she had never seen a petrified fruit. Lu Tongtian, even if this is a petrified fruit, it's not worth that much. Although there are usually rare spells recorded in the petrified fruit, no matter how rare a high-level spell or even a super spell is, it's not worth 70 million gold coins, Lan said matter-of-factly. High-level magic scrolls on the continent were usually priced between a few 100,000 to 1 million gold coins. Super magic scrolls were even more expensive, ranging from a few million to tens of millions. Even if the petrified fruit's price was one level higher, it would only be 10 to 20 million gold coins. 70 million gold coins was indeed a sky-high price. What a woman's view. If I say that I found this petrified fruit in the sacred tree area near the royal tree area, do you think it's worth 70 million gold coins? Hearing this, Lan couldn't help but take a few more looks at the petrified fruit. Her hands were trembling slightly. Yunxing, Gufeng and Qi were confused. It was only after Lan explained it that they understood. When the Great Elder brought them into the magic forest, he had already said that the magic forest was divided into the sky area, sacred tree area, and royal tree area. These three areas corresponded to students below the level of sky magicians, students and mentors at the level of Saint Law Emperor, and Law Overlords respectively. Yunxing and the others couldn't enter the last two areas because their levels weren't high enough. However, Lan and Lu Tongtian were already Saint Law Emperors, so they had entered the sacred tree area. The sacred tree area just happened to be adjacent to the royal tree area. In other words, it was very likely that the magic fruit had rolled to the imperial tree area. As everyone knows, there's only one royal tree in the magic forest. The petrified fruit on it is no small matter. It was left behind by the first generation of law overlords. The petrified fruit on it is a super spell. If you're lucky, you might even encounter a god-slaying spell, Lu Tongtian said unhappily. Although Lu Tongtian had a rough appearance, he was a decent person. His words were most likely true. God-slaying spell? Yunsheng's heart skipped a beat. Yunsheng, it's up to you whether you accept this petrified fruit or not. Lan sighed and reluctantly put down the petrified fruit. As long as one was a mage, there would be no one who would not be tempted after hearing about the god-slaying spell. Chapter 773. Yunsheng swallowed her saliva and stared at the magic fruit. She could not even control her fingers. In the magic system of the boundless world, magic was divided into beginner magic, intermediate magic, and advanced magic. Above that would be super magic. As for the god-slaying magic, it was even rarer. It was said that only law overlords who had comprehended the four laws of nature could learn it. However, once this sort of magic was mastered, its power would be enough to move mountains and fill seas. It could even destroy the world. It was said that the first law overlord had used this god-slaying magic to cut off the head of the Bakra Orcs Serpent tribe leader. Even a heaven-defying existence like the Bakra Orcs tribe leader could be killed by the god-slaying magic in one move. This showed how powerful this magic was. However, the god-slaying magic was just a name. This was because only law overlords could learn the god-slaying magic. Otherwise, if one did not have the strength to control the magic, their magic soul would be destroyed and they would be reduced to ashes. Therefore, even if Yunxing had obtained the petrified fruit, it was still unknown whether she could learn the god-slaying magic one day. Even so, having the god-slaying magic in hand was still a very cool thing. It was also with this in mind that Yunxing decided to use the high price of 70 million gold coins to obtain the petrified fruit. Seeing Yunxing, Azura, and the rest leave with the petrified fruit, Tongtian could not help but sigh. Lu Tongtian stood at the side, his heart bleeding. He had obtained this magic fruit by chance. As he was not strong enough, he had kept it. Who knew that it would end up benefiting someone else? Senior apprentice brother Lu, why are you so muddle-headed? You actually gave such a good thing to that bitch Yunxing. Qinlian watched from the side with jealousy and hatred. But with Lan glaring at her from the side, Qinlian could only worry. Qinlian was still blaming Lu Tongtian. This D*Ned man actually had a trick up his sleeve. Lu Tongtian was a very lucky person. It was a pity that he was unlucky. The good things he obtained did not make up for the losses. Isn't it all because of you? The more Lu Tongtian thought about it, the more sullen he felt. For the first time, his tone seemed to be blaming Qinlian. Qinlian felt that something was wrong. She couldn't offend Lu Tongtian now, so she quickly said, "Senior brother Lu, don't be angry. Regardless of whether the petrified fruit contained the deity-slaying magic or not, the petrified fruit was still a deity-slaying magic. With Yunsheng's strength, it might not be a good thing for her to obtain the god-slaying magic." What do you mean by that? Lu Tongtian didn't understand. Senior brother Lu, don't ask so much. In short, I have a way to make Yunxing unable to sit still and enjoy the petrified fruit, Qinlian smiled. She had a bad idea in her mind again. After Yunxing got the petrified fruit, she carefully put it away. Today we vented our anger and ruthlessly slaughtered Lu Tongtian. I'll treat everyone to a drink. Yunxing sounded like a nouveau riche. Hee, I won't interfere. Today is the day when the camp receives letters. I have to go and see if Linger has replied to my letter, Gu Feng said as he hurriedly went to the relay station to check if there was a reply from Linger. Seeing Gu Feng's appearance, Lu Tongtian wanted to say something but stopped. What? Linger still hasn't replied? Yun Xing knew Gu Feng's feelings towards Linger. However, Linger had already returned to the eastern capital for more than a month. Gu Feng would send a letter every 7 days, but Linger didn't reply to any of them. Although Gu Feng didn't say anything, he was still very sad. Things are a bit strange. I'll write a letter to ask later. Yun Xing was also confused. Logically speaking, after Linger returned to the eastern capital, she would definitely write a letter saying that she was safe. However, it had already been a while since she went to participate in the blood purge and returned. There was still no news from Linger. Yun Xing, who was worried about her good friend, wrote a letter to Linger in the afternoon. Yun Xing didn't know that not long after Linger returned to the eastern capital, or rather when she stepped into the eastern capital, she was already under house arrest. Donghuang Linger was very depressed. She knew that the Empress Dowager was seriously ill and rushed back. When she returned to the palace, she found out that the Empress Dowager was only infected with a cold. After chatting for a long time, Linger returned to her palace. However, she didn't know that all the people in her palace had been replaced. Not only that, the Empress Dowager and her brother urged her to divorce later Qin Dugu as soon as possible. Donghuang Linger naturally didn't want to, but she couldn't leave her palace. The left prime minister's people were guarding outside her palace all day long. Because of this, Donghuang Linger got angry several times. However, this time, no matter how willful she was, she ignored the Empress Dowager and the East Emperor who she had always doted on. It had been a month since she returned to the imperial capital, but the time for her to return to the continent's magic elite camp was still far away. Your Highness, this is your letter. A palace maid passed a letter to Donghuang Linger. Donghuang Linger didn't need to read the letter to know who wrote it. Since she returned to the eastern capital, she had been receiving letters from Gu Feng. Donghuang Linger couldn't express her admiration for Gu Feng. It wasn't that she didn't have any feelings for Gu Feng. However, she also understood that she and Gu Feng would never be together. Therefore, she didn't reply to any of the letters. Burn it as usual. Donghuang Linger lowered her eyes and said with a bit of sadness. She was afraid that she would be swayed after reading the letter. Therefore, she didn't even read the letter. However, Donghuang Linger didn't know that the letter wasn't written by Gu Feng, but by her good friend Yun Xing. The palace maid turned and left. After a while, the East Emperor, Donghuang Tianqi, came to visit Donghuang Linger. Brother. Donghuang Linger saw her brother and quickly stood up to greet him. Sister, there's no need to be so courteous. I came here today to discuss the marriage between you and later Qin's Crown Prince Dugu. Donghuang Tianqi's voice was gloomy and his eyes were somewhat empty. Brother Linger has already said that I won't get married to a traitor like Dugu Xiu. Donghuang Linger's unruly attitude came up again. Sister, as the princess of the eastern capital, you shoulder the responsibility of the dynasty's rise and fall. This time you can't be willful. Crown Prince Dugu has already ordered people to send the betrothal gifts over. In a few days he will enter the palace to discuss the wedding date with mother. Donghuang Linger was dumbfounded by Donghuang Tianqi's words. Donghuang Linger suddenly raised her head and stared at her brother. Who are you? You are not my brother. Brother, you won't force me to marry someone I don't like. She went forward and grabbed onto Donghuang Tianqi. She wanted to see if this person who wanted to destroy her lifelong happiness was her brother or not. However, the cold-looking man in front of her was clearly her brother. Men look after the princess. For the next few days she is not allowed to go anywhere. Donghuang Tianqi flicked his sleeve and left. Donghuang Linger was fiercely thrown onto the ground. Her heart sank bit by bit. Chapter 774. Princess, please don't be willful. His Majesty is doing this for your own good. The palace maid at the side hurriedly went up to support her. Donghuang Linger grabbed the palace maid's wrist and said with a sharp voice, Speak, what happened when I wasn't around? Her brother wasn't someone impersonating him. However, ever since she returned, her mother and brother seemed to be acting a little strange. Donghuang Linger wasn't an idiot. She knew that something must have happened that she didn't know about. If Minister Zhua and his group thought that she was still that pampered canary in the palace, then they were gravely mistaken. Your Highness, this servant doesn't know anything. The palace maid cowered. Donghuang Linger took out her magic scepter, and the emerald green wind scythe circled around her. Her face was filled with killing intent. Are you Minister Zuo's subordinate or Duguxiu's subordinate? The palace maid felt a chill in her heart. Just as she was about to escape, the wind scythe slashed the palace maid's calf, causing blood to flow out. The palace maid was in so much pain that she almost fainted. She didn't expect that such a delicate woman like the princess would be so ruthless. Dong Huanglinger stepped on the palace maid's wound. You should have heard that I have been studying in the continent's magic elite camp for the past few years. Do you want to try the taste of magic, the taste of wind scythe slashing your beautiful face? This palace maid was just an ordinary martial artist who knew some martial arts. She was originally sent by Minister Zuo to monitor Dong Huanglinger. Neither Minister Zuo nor Duguxiu expected that Dong Huanglinger would counterattack. Dong Huanglinger had followed Yun Sheng for a few years, especially during the days in the Sky Wings arena. Her wisdom and methods were already incomparable to the Dong Huanglinger who had just left the eastern capital. One is marked by the company one keeps, and one is marked by the company one keeps. Currently, Dong Huanglinger had already learned most of Yunsheng's bandit style of strengthening and robbing. She knew very well that she had to be unscrupulous when dealing with her enemies. That palace maid was so frightened that she immediately told Dong Huanglinger everything that had happened earlier. Hearing that, Dong Huanglinger chopped the palace maid's neck with her palm, and the palace maid fainted. Dong Huanglinger decided to escape from the imperial palace first. However, she was still worried about Empress Dowager Situ. After hesitating for a while, Dong Huanglinger decided to go to Empress Dowager Situ's palace first. Dong Huanglinger snuck into Empress Dowager's palace. Imperial mother, Imperial brother wants me to marry Duguxiu. Do you know about this? Ling, you're not young anymore. It's time for you to get married. Empress Dowager Situ looked kind as she took her daughter's hand. Imperial mother Ling said that I can marry anyone, but I can't marry rebels. Could it be that you didn't know that my father was killed by an assassin sent by the Qin Emperor later Qin? Dong Huanglinger's eyes turned red. When the previous East monarch passed away, Dong Huanglinger was still very young. Empress Dowager Situ only said that the previous East monarch died of an illness. After Dong Huanglinger grew up, she became even more suspicious of the previous East monarch's death. When she left the eastern capital, on the surface she went to learn magic. However, in reality she was secretly investigating the true cause of the previous East monarch's death. Sure enough, she found some clues. All kinds of clues showed that the previous East monarch's death was related to the left minister and the later Qin dynasty. And because she knew the truth, no matter what, Dong Huanglinger was unwilling to marry Duguxiu. Empress Dowager Situ had a terrified expression as she covered her daughter's mouth. Ling, who told you these words? Don't speak nonsense. I'm not young anymore. Imperial mother, we can't stay here anymore. Imperial brother seems to be acting a bit strange. I'll bring you away first. Dong Huanglinger pulled Empress Dowager Situ up and wanted to leave. Your Highness, where are you going? A delicate voice sounded from the side. A beautiful palace maid was the first to open the curtain and walk in. This palace maid was around 28 years old. She had a pair of seductive eyes and a graceful figure. She emitted a seductive aura from her bones. Dong Huanglinger saw that this palace maid didn't look familiar. She didn't know when this woman came to the Empress Dowager's palace. She became vigilant and asked, "Who are you? Why are you in Imperial Mother's palace?" Princess hasn't returned to the palace for a long time. It's natural that you don't recognize Big Sister. The palace maid walked over. The strong fragrance coming from her body made Dong Huanglinger frown. Who's your little sister? Don't act so intimate. Dong Huanglinger was annoyed. She hated seeing this kind of appearance from women the most. This woman had a seductive aura. Just by looking at her, Dong Huanglinger felt that there was something wrong with this woman. Subconsciously, she pulled Empress Dowager Situ and retreated a few steps, keeping a safe distance from this woman. Little sister, don't be angry. This humble one's name is Qi Bai. I'm the concubine of the Dark Prince. After you marry the Dark Prince, you and I will be serving the Dark Prince in the future. I'm 1 year older than you. If you don't want to call me Big Sister, you can just call me Qi Bai. The seductive woman covered her mouth and laughed lightly. Hearing that, Dong Huanglinger became even more displeased. Who wants to marry someone like Duguxiu who has wild ambitions? Go back and tell him that even if Dong Huanglinger dies, I won't marry him. After Dong Huanglinger finished speaking, she felt a pain on her neck. Then she lost consciousness and fell onto the ground. Behind her, Empress Dowager Situ had a stupefied expression on her face. In her hand she was holding onto a hairpin that was dipped in poison. Madame Chi Bai walked over and touched Dong Huang Linger's face. Tisk tsk, as expected, you have a good appearance. It's a pity that your temper is a bit too strong. Forget it, let big sister properly teach you a lesson. When the time comes, Crown Prince Dugu will naturally dote on you. Madame Chi Bai. The palace maid that was knocked unconscious by Dong Huang Ling held onto her wound and came over to apologize. Useless thing. Luckily, the Crown Prince was smart enough to order me to control Dong Huang Tianchi and Old Lady Situ. Otherwise, the princess would have escaped. Madame Chi Bai ordered someone to carry away the unconscious Dong Huang Linger. I know my mistake. All right, just now the princess ordered me to burn the letters. From the looks of it, the letters were sent over from the continent's magic elite camp. The palace maid took out 2 letters. Madame Chi Bai casually took the letter from Gu Feng and took a few glances at it. PFFF, she laughed out loud. Oh, I even met someone who is infatuated with love. It's a pity that his sweetheart is going to marry the crown prince. Burn the letters. Do it cleanly. Understood. The palace maid hurriedly retreated. A few days later, Gu Feng looked for Yun Sheng anxiously. Yun Sheng, did you receive Linger's letters? I have already written over 10 letters, but she didn't reply to a single one of them. Gu Feng had a depressed expression on his face. Earlier, when Dong Huang Linger left, she was worried that Gu Feng would request to escort her. Thus she didn't tell Gu Feng. After Gu Feng found out about it, he even secretly complained to Yun Sheng. After that, he started to write letters to Linger. However, after he sent the letters out, there was no reply. After being reminded by Gu Feng, only then did Yun Sheng remember that Linger had indeed gone back for too long. She also didn't reply to any of the letters that she wrote to Linger earlier. Something was wrong. Come quickly, there should be more monthly votes added today. Chapter 775. Yun Sheng calculated carefully. It had been 1.5 months since she and Dong Huang Linger returned to the eastern capital from the Heavenly Wing City to Linger's return. During this time, Yun Sheng didn't write to Linger because of the Dutian Blood Beast Worlds trial. However, Gu Feng was different. He started writing to Dong Huang Linger a few days after she left. He had already written 7 or 8 letters. If Dong Huang Linger deliberately didn't reply to Gu Feng's letters, then it had already been 7 or 8 days since she sent them. Or did something happen to the Eastern Empress Dowager's illness? Perhaps. Yun Sheng was thinking about Dong Huang Linger's marriage. Or perhaps Dong Huang Linger had sneaked out and was discovered. Now she was imprisoned in the eastern capital. Yun Sheng, why don't we make a trip to the eastern capital? Gu Feng was really worried about Linger. We have to investigate this matter first. Don't worry, the Heavenly Hunting Corps also has a branch in the eastern capital. I'll write a letter to second uncle and ask him about it. Yun Sheng comforted Gu Feng. Gu Feng nodded his head vaguely. Gu Feng was a little unhappy that he didn't receive Linger's letter. He didn't want Yun Sheng and Chi to worry, so he went to the tavern alone and started drinking without saying anything. Who would have thought that the wine would make him even more sorrowful? Halfway through, he started to feel drowsy. When he was half asleep, someone at the table next to him started talking. What? Are you going back to later, Qin? The blood purge will start soon. If you go now, you'll miss the opportunity. The blood purge hasn't been peaceful recently. My mother is worried. Since the crown prince and the princess of the eastern capital are getting married, I'll ask her to marry me. You know that my mother is the crown prince's nanny. The crown prince treats me like a brother. The 2 mainland warrior elite camp students beside him were talking enthusiastically. Gu Feng only heard the words princess of the eastern capital. His brain exploded. Ignoring the smell of alcohol on him, he rushed to the table next to him and said, "What did you say? The princess of the eastern capital is going to marry the crown prince of later Qin?" When the 2 cultivators saw him reeking of alcohol, they were too lazy to say anything more to him. They just said, "Go away, where did this drunkard come from?" I told you to speak. Gu Feng grabbed the man who was speaking. His eyes were red and filled with ferocious light. "Hey brat, how dare you yell at me? Do you know who I am?" The man was about to teach Gu Feng a lesson because he was the son of the later Qin crown prince's wet nurse. Wait, don't attack. This kid looks like Gu Feng. He's a light magician from the elite camp, the only successor of the dazzling light teachers. Another man recognized Gu Feng. Towards light magicians, the elite warriors of the continent still had some reservations. Bad luck, what kind of drunkard is he? The cultivator could only let go of his hand resentfully. However, Gu Feng didn't care about that. He hugged him tightly and wouldn't let go. He even shouted, "Tell me, is it true that the princess of the eastern capital is going to marry the crown prince of the later Qin dynasty? I'm scared of you." The cultivator couldn't hit Gu Feng, but he also couldn't get rid of him. He could only say, "This kind of thing can't be a daughter-in-law." The two countries are connected by marriage. Announcements have been posted all over the streets of the eastern capital and later Qin. When Gu Feng heard this, he was still unwilling to give up. "Then what's the name of the princess of the eastern capital?" "I think she's called Ling." "Hey, why are you asking so many questions?" The cultivator took advantage of Gu Feng's inattention to break free and quickly left. Gu Feng sat on the ground in a daze. After a while, he let out a dry cry and jumped out of the tavern. 3 to 4 days later, Yun Xing finally received a reply from her second uncle, Yun Songlong. However, in the reply letter there was a notice attached. After reading the letter and notice, Yun Sheng's calm face had a slight ripple. She faintly felt uneasy in her heart and immediately went to look for Gu Feng. However, she didn't know that she couldn't find any trace of Gu Feng even after searching the entire continent's elite warriors of the continent. Yun Sheng became more and more worried in her heart. She had no choice but to look for Qi first. Qi went to Gu Feng's camp again. When he came back, there was a hint of anxiety on his usually expressionless face. He took out a letter and handed it to Yun Sheng. The letter was left by Gu Feng a few days ago. It said that he was worried about Donghuang Ling and went to the eastern capital to look for her. Gu Feng was too impulsive. Qi shook his head. Gu Feng also had feelings for Donghuang Ling. "Oh no, we must immediately chase after Gu Feng." After reading the letter, Yun Sheng's expression became anxious and uneasy. "He's only going to the eastern capital. Why are you so anxious? He should be back by the time he sees Ling." Seeing that Yun Sheng's expression wasn't right, Qi couldn't help but feel strange. The Yun Sheng he knew was someone who wouldn't bat an eyelid even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of her. However, today Yun Sheng looked somewhat anxious. It's impossible for him to see Ling. She is going to marry later Qin's crown prince, Duguxiu. Yun Sheng only knew about this after reading the letter from her second uncle. No wonder Donghuang Ling didn't come back after returning to the eastern capital. The people from the Heaven Extermination Hunting Corps heard that not long after Donghuang Ling returned to the eastern capital, later Qin's crown prince, Duguxiu, entered the palace. After that, the Eastern Emperor personally announced to the world that the eastern capital and later Qin had formed an alliance. Half a year later, Duguxiu personally came to fetch the bride. This matter had already spread like wildfire across the continent, and there was no one who did not know about it. Only Yun Sheng and Gu Feng, who were in seclusion in the continent's magic elite camp, didn't know about it. Gu Feng, that brat, has deep feelings for Ling. If he knows that Ling is going to get married, he will definitely not let it go. We must immediately go to the eastern capital. It's best if we can find him before Gu Feng sees Ling. Yun Sheng's words made Qi realize the seriousness of the matter. Donghuang Ling current status was extraordinary. Other than being a princess, she also had another identity. She was the crown princess of later Qin's crown prince. If Gu Feng was impulsive and was caught red-handed, he might be treated as an assassin. Duguxiu's fierce reputation had been around for a long time. If Gu Feng was caught by him, the consequences would be even more unimaginable. Gu Feng might not have told you, but Ling true identity is the eastern capital's princess. There's another thing that Gu Feng doesn't know. Ling ran away from the marriage. Yun Sheng told Qi everything. If that's the case, why is she marrying the later Qin's crown prince now? Qi also realized how difficult it was for Gu Feng to have such a relationship. This is also what I don't understand. Ling temperament is definitely not someone who will compromise. Yun Sheng faintly felt that there must be something hidden. Moreover, this matter should be related to Empress Dowager Situ's illness. Chapter 776. Donghuang Ling once told Yun Sheng that as a princess of the royal family, she had never had a real close friend since she was a child. Yun Sheng was her only friend. If she got married in the future, she would definitely invite Yun Sheng to attend the ceremony. However, this marriage came too suddenly. Furthermore, Donghuang Ling did not reveal any information about it beforehand. Thus, Yun Sheng thought that there must be something hidden behind it. So, she had to go to the eastern capital. The more Yun Sheng and Qi thought about it, the more they felt that something was wrong. So, the two of them decided to go to the eastern capital immediately and try their best to find Gu Feng. Yun Sheng and Qi found their respective mentors. The two of them were also clever. They didn't say the specific reason for going to the eastern capital. They only said that because Dong Huanglinger's marriage was approaching, they were invited to attend the ceremony. The mentors of the two didn't suspect anything. They just told them to go early and come back early. Before Yunsheng left the elite camp, Yunsheng also specially went to visit Yi Baiming. Yunsheng didn't know why she went to say goodbye to Yi Baiming. Maybe it was because he almost lost his life to save her last time. Whether Yunsheng was willing to admit it or not, after experiencing the Duqian blood realm last time, she had already admitted that Yi Baiming had a place in her heart. It was just that it was hard to say whether this place had reached the level of lovers. When Yunsheng found Yi Baiming, he was practicing. The ghost prison's great elder was nervously guarding outside. Baiming is practicing now. It's not convenient for him to see guests. The ghost prison's great elder was in a difficult position and dissuaded Yunsheng. Mentor let her in. In the practice room, Yi Baiming's voice was calm. The ghost prison's great elder could only let Yunsheng in. Although she had known Yi Baiming for several years, Yunsheng could not help but be stunned every time she saw this man. This guy could really be called the model of a feast for the eyes. At this moment, Yi Baiming had just finished practicing. His snow-white training clothes were drenched in sweat. He was wiping away his sweat. His long black hair casually hung down to his waist. There was no bun, no extra accessories. It was just casually scattered, but there was an indescribable sense of beauty. It was as if he was standing in a painting. "You came here just to see me?" Yi Baiming tilted his head slightly and teased. Yunsheng coughed a few times to hide the embarrassment on her face. Yi Baiming knew that Yunsheng would not easily come to the mainland's elite warrior camp to look for him. So even if he was at a critical moment, he still let Yunsheng come in. Knowing that Yunsheng was going to the eastern capital, Yi Baiming was a little dissatisfied. In addition to Yunsheng going with Qi, the other reason was Duguxiu. Yi Baiming had been brooding over the matter of Duguxiu proposing to Yunsheng. Although he and Yunsheng were now engaged, as long as the two were not married, Yi Baiming lacked a sense of security. He could not wait for Duguxiu to marry a wife. It would be best if he married 180 wives. That way he would not have time to pester Yunsheng. Duguxiu is going to get married. Why are you going? Yi Baiming wanted to go with Yunsheng. Unfortunately, he had more important things to do at the moment. It was also good to let the little wild cat sharpen her claws by herself. Just now, Yi Baiming had just integrated the first Qilin blood crystal. The 8 desolate artifact was about to be unearthed. The ghost prison's great elder ordered him to go into seclusion for a while and try to integrate as many Beast King blood crystals as possible. Yi Baiming also knew that last time in the Duqian blood seal, he had caused a lot of trouble for the ghost prison's great elder. Moreover, the inexplicable beast blood berserk had also troubled him. After that, he heard the ghost prison's great elder describe the situation at that time. He almost hurt the little wild cat. Yi Baiming was very afraid. This time he could still recognize the little wild cat at the last moment. But next time, if he completely transformed, he was afraid that he would use his sharp claws to tear her throat. In this world, the person he was most unwilling to hurt was her. So, even if it was for the little wild cat, he must learn to control the mysterious power in his body that was getting stronger and stronger. "I'm going to visit Linger. I have a feeling that Linger will not agree to this marriage so easily." Yunsheng could smell a strong smell of jealousy from Yi Baiming's words. She subconsciously explained. Yunsheng cursed in her heart. Night Fox was also petty. Duguxiu failed in his marriage proposal. This matter had already passed for a long time, but he still remembered it firmly in his heart. Duguxiu was the crown prince of the later Qin dynasty. In the past few years he probably had a dozen children. How would he have the energy to care about a small magician like her? Going to visit Dong Huanglinger is not a problem. But if you meet Duguxiu, don't have a direct confrontation with him. Yi Baiming believed that with Yunsheng's wit, she would definitely not be at a disadvantage. But this woman, sometimes she would value her friends too much. However, this was also what he liked about her. Duguxiu's strength is very unpredictable. He might be on the same level as me. So if you really meet him, don't fight him head-on. Yi Baiming rubbed Yunsheng's forehead. His gaze was somewhat reluctant to part with her. This time he did not tell Yunsheng that he was going to fuse with the blood crystal. Fusing with the blood crystal was a big or small matter. If the fusion was not done well, it was very possible that, "Don't worry, I will bring Tycoon Jean with me. Even if we really meet with something, I will be able to ensure our safety." Yunsheng was very confident. Tycoon Jean could even kill the martial saint of the later Qin dynasty. He could be considered as the strongest bodyguard. She had fought with Duguxiu before and it didn't seem like much. She didn't know why Yi Baiming had such a high evaluation of him. Yi Baiming wanted to say something but stopped. A hint of obscurity flashed past his eyes. Yun Xing did not notice the strangeness in Yi Baiming's words. After bidding farewell to Yi Baiming, she left the mainland's magic elite camp with abandon. After Yun Xing left, the ghost prison's great elder walked in impatiently. How is it? Did the fusion of the blood crystal go smoothly? It's still going well. I'll start fusing with the second blood crystal in 3 days. There was still a thin layer of red on Yi Baiming's skin. The first Qilin blood crystal was slowly transforming his body. 3 days? Isn't it too rushed? That year it took me half a month to fuse with the first blood crystal. You only used half an hour, right? The second blood crystal was fused a year later. The third one took a long time. You waited for 5 years. The ghost prison's great elder was still a little worried. More haste, less speed. When Yi Baiming first entered the mainland's warrior elite camp, he did not even see a ghost during his daily training. He was unusually lazy. Now his personality had changed. After thinking about it, he was still the same person. As for his personality, the ghost prison's great elder concluded that at the crucial moment, women were still the most useful. Yi Baiming did not know that his teacher was full of fantasies. He thought for a while and asked, "Teacher, do you know, other than you and me, who else entered the Dutian blood seal and obtained the Beast King blood crystal?" Chapter 777. The ghost prison's elder did not understand why Yi Baiming would suddenly ask about this matter. There's not enough time. Teacher also mentioned that when we were in the blood sky Jie, Master Si Ming of the temple said that the 8 barren lands divine artifact would be unearthed in a few months or at most half a year. If there are people from other forces who have fused with the Beast King blood crystal, there will be a fierce battle. I'm just preparing for a rainy day and making early plans. After Yi Baiming's explanation, the ghost prison's great elder was relieved. Logically speaking, not many people can enter the Beast King's tomb, but we can't rule out the possibility that someone has sneaked in. You've been to the Skywing City, so you should have met the Skywing City Lord. He should have fused with the Rock Clan's Beast King blood crystal, so he is invincible in the battle in the sky. Since the ghost prison's great elder could tell Yi Baiming about the existence of the Beast King blood crystal, it was very likely that some other experts had also told their descendants about the existence of the blood crystal. If that's the case, I should speed up the process of fusing with the blood crystal. I will begin closed-door training in the next few days, Yi Baiming said in a low voice. Yi Baiming recalled the situation when he saw the Dark Crown Prince Duguxiu. If he guessed correctly, the Dark Crown Prince should have also obtained the Beast King blood crystal. And judging from his combat skills and the changes in his body, he should have also entered the Qilin tomb and fused with at least a few Qilin blood crystals. As one of the 5 great countries on the continent, the later Qin would definitely send people to the divine artifact trip in a few months. As the crown prince of the later Qin, Duguxiu would definitely go to the divine artifact trip. At that time, the two of them would fight head-on again. The ghost prison's great elder did not know what Yi Baiming was planning. On the continent, there were not many people who could be regarded as opponents by Yi Baiming. But Duguxiu was one of them. Because Yi Baiming knew that Duguxiu was the same kind of person as him. They were ambitious and pursued the path of the strongest. If the two of them met again, they would definitely fight to the death. The eastern capital was the oldest capital city on the boundless continent. It was built more than 4,000 years ago. The scenery was beautiful, with white embankments and willows. The capital city was adjacent to a famous river on the continent. It was a famous paradise on the boundless continent. However, since the establishment of the 5 great kingdoms on the continent, the eastern capital did not fall behind. Instead, the eastern capital lost its former status as the number 1 capital of the continent. Today's eastern capital still had its culture, but it was no longer as glorious as before. Yun Sheng and Qi traveled day and night and finally arrived in Dongdu 3 days later, which was 2 days before Duguxiu came to pick up the bride. After passing through the crowded city gate, Yun Sheng and Abandon entered Dongdu City. As soon as he entered the city, he saw the announcement board beside the city gate. It was pasted with a big red piece of good news. Abandon squeezed his way forward. The notice clearly stated, later Qin's crown prince would enter the eastern capital to pick up the bride in 2 days. At that time, the whole city would welcome him together. In order to celebrate such a joyous occasion, the East Emperor, Donghuang Tianqi, specially reduced the taxes for half a year. When the people in the city heard the good news, they all whispered to each other and praised the marriage. Yun Sheng, who was in the crowd, also listened carefully. Crown Prince Dugu and the princess are a match made in heaven. Isn't that so? With the eastern capital and later Qin's marriage, our lives will be better. I heard that in order to marry the princess, Crown Prince Dugu brought a total of 66 carriages as betrothal gifts. There were all sorts of things and all he heard were praises. No matter if it was the people of the eastern capital or the royal family, they all approved of the wedding. Abandon squeezed through the crowd and walked to a corner of the city wall with Yun Sheng. It's similar to what the hunting corps heard. In 2 days later Qin's crown prince would come to pick up the bride. Time is tight and the eastern capital is so big. How are we going to find Gufeng? Abandoned also asked around. In the past few days the princess had been in the palace preparing for the wedding. There was nothing strange in the palace. It seemed that Gufeng hadn't found Donghuang Linger yet. Let's go to the Hunters Guild first and see if they can find a way to let us see Linger. For a moment, Yun Sheng didn't know how to find Gufeng. She could only go to the Hunters Guild in the eastern capital first. After arriving at the Hunters Guild in the eastern capital, Yun Sheng casually took out her guest elder badge. The person in charge of the eastern capital quickly came out to receive her. The people in the Hunters Guild promised Yun Sheng that they would look for Gufeng in all the inns and restaurants in the city. Yun Sheng thanked the person in charge of the Hunters Guild and was about to leave with Abandoned. At this time, a man dressed as a civil official walked into the Hunters Guild with a few guards. Seeing this, Yun Sheng pushed aside and watched coldly with Abandoned. Right, Prime Minister, why are you here? The person in charge of the Hunters Guild respectfully invited the civil official in. It turned out that after the decline of the eastern capital, the 5 major countries had forced the young emperor to reduce the number of troops in the eastern capital. After the princess of the eastern capital got married, the envoys of the other countries and merchants from other countries rushed into the eastern capital. The flow of people in the city increased sharply. The right prime minister, who was in charge of public security and government affairs, had no choice but to hire the Hunters Guild. When Yun Sheng heard this, she knew that this was an opportunity. Yun Sheng gave the person in charge of the eastern capital a look, indicating that he should go and receive the guests. Yun Sheng remembered that the short and fat man she met in Tianyi City last time was the left prime minister of the eastern capital. She had heard from Donghuang Ling that the left prime minister of the eastern capital was not a good person. However, unlike the greedy left prime minister, the right prime minister of the eastern capital was an honest official. He was also the grand tutor of Donghuang Tianqi, Linger's elder brother. Although he was a little pedantic, he had a good relationship with the major forces in the eastern capital. What was more rare was that he still respected the imperial family, which had lost power. As for the left prime minister's efforts to promote the marriage between the later Qin and the eastern capital, the upright right prime minister had a quarrel with the left prime minister in the imperial court. Deacon Yin, I'm here to entrust you with a task regarding the crown prince of later Qin's wedding. The right prime minister sighed and told the person in charge of the Hunters Guild about the crown prince's wedding in a few days. The number of soldiers in the eastern capital was small. When the Donghuang dynasty fell, the original army of 1 million was reduced to 50,000 soldiers. In the past few years, the eastern capital's financial deficit had reduced the regular army by more than 10,000 soldiers. Now, the entire eastern capital, including the imperial guards, only had about 30,000 soldiers. A few days later, the crown prince of later Qin would welcome the crown prince of later Qin. Before the crown prince of later Qin took the princess back to the later Qin, he had to follow the etiquette of the Donghuang dynasty and hold an incense bath for 3 days and 3 nights in the Eastern Temple. At that time, the Eastern Temple had to be strictly guarded both inside and outside. However, the army had been deployed to defend the Eastern capital and the imperial palace. As a result, there was no army stationed in the Eastern Temple. The military affairs were originally the responsibility of the left prime minister, but he threw the defense this time to the right prime minister. The right prime minister had no choice. Under the suggestion of his advisor, he thought of the Hunters Guild. Chapter 778. When Yun Sheng heard this, her heart skipped a beat. This was a great opportunity. She was just worrying about how to sneak in and find Donghuang Ling. Yun Sheng wasn't familiar with the imperial palace in the eastern capital. Now that the princess was getting married, the imperial palace would definitely be heavily guarded. Someone as meticulous as the hidden crown prince would definitely place his spies in the imperial palace. However, Dongzhao Temple was different. That was a place of Buddhism. Even the hidden crown prince or the left minister's men would find it hard to infiltrate. If she could find Donghuang Ling there, she would definitely be able to ask about the cause and effect of this matter. Yun Sheng took the opportunity to walk forward. Lord Right Minister, if you don't mind, can you let us handle this mission? The Lord Right Minister raised his head and his eyes lit up. There was a young man and a young woman standing in front of him. You two are. The Lord Right Minister didn't know that there were such people in the Hunters Guild in the Eastern Capital. The person in charge of the Eastern Capital was also flattered. He didn't expect that Yun Xing, the beloved disciple of the guest elder, would be willing to accept such a small mission. However, Yun Xing and Qi's willingness to accept this mission from Dongzhao Temple solved a huge problem for the Hunters Guild. Although the Hunters Guild in the Eastern Capital had been established for a long time, due to the Eastern Capital's decline, a large number of hunters went to other countries and even places like the Skywings Arena to seek a way out. The hunters left in the Eastern Capital were of average standard. There wasn't a single leader who could take on such a big task as the Crown Prince's escort. In addition, Yun Sheng was the deputy commander of the Sky Expedition Hunting Corps. She could deploy a portion of the troops of the Sky Expedition Hunting Corps. Lord Right Minister, these two are the beloved disciples of the Hunters Guild's elder. This is the deputy commander of the Sky Expedition Hunting Corps. The one beside her is her senior brother. Speaking of which, it's fate. These two are the same as the princess, students of the continent's magic elite camp. The person in charge of the Eastern Capital introduced them familiarly. The Lord Right Minister looked at them again. The two had outstanding appearances and temperaments. What was even rarer was that the two were wearing specially made mage robes. Right Minister had seen Princess Donghuang Ling before. Donghuang Ling was also wearing a similar mage robe. From the looks of it, the identities of the two of them were definitely the same. Since he's from the same sect as the princess, that's great. During this period of time, the princess has not stepped out of the house and is very depressed. If it is convenient for the two of you, it would also be good to comfort the princess. In the right side of the political marriage that everyone praised, there was a faint trace of dissatisfaction in his tone. Yun Xing looked at him and took the opportunity to ask, "What's wrong? Could it be that the princess is not satisfied with this marriage?" The right Prime Minister hesitated and shook his head. I can only say that as the princess of the Eastern Capital, there are many times when she has no choice. The right Prime Minister and the person in charge of the Eastern Capital exchanged a few words and then officially announced the mission. Yun Sheng and Qi would be the leaders, and some hunters from the Eastern Capital would be deployed. Yun Sheng also specially went to the area around Dongzhao Temple to learn about the terrain and the nearby exits. On one hand, Yun Sheng was looking for Gufeng. On the other hand, after Gufeng entered the Eastern Capital, he had been thinking of ways to enter the palace and find Donghuang Ling. However, Gufeng didn't have the connections that Yun Xing did, nor did he know about the Hunters Guild. He was just a commoner, and it was simply impossible for him to enter the palace. Therefore, although Gufeng arrived a few days earlier than Yun Sheng and the others, he had no way to enter the heavily guarded palace. Seeing that the day when the Crown Prince of the Qin dynasty would come to pick up the bride was getting closer and closer, Gufeng, this rash kid, finally thought of a way. He heard that on the day when the Crown Prince of the Qin dynasty, Duguxiu, came to pick up the bride, according to the customs of the two countries, the fiancé had to bathe and burn incense at the Dongzhao Temple in the Eastern Capital and worship Buddha for 3 days before the wedding ceremony. When Gufeng heard the news, he was wild with joy. He secretly sneaked to the vicinity of the Dongzhao Temple and bribed a small monk in the temple, waiting for Donghuang Ling and Duguxiu to come. All of this was carried out in an orderly manner. A few days later, Duguxiu's wedding procession finally entered the Eastern Capital. 2 days later, Duguxiu brought 66 carriages of betrothal gifts and entered the Eastern Capital. All of the commoners in the city lined the streets to welcome them, and wedding blankets were spread out along the way. The Crown Prince of the Qin dynasty rode his carriage all the way to the Eastern Capital. On the carriage, Crown Prince Dugu had a handsome nose bridge, a pair of eagle eyes, and a somewhat tall and sturdy figure. Looking at the Qin soldiers beside his carriage, each of them was like a dragon or a tiger. Wherever they passed, their steps were uniform and they looked very mighty. Such a man formed a sharp contrast with the weak Eastern Emperor. One of the Wuji 5 Annulus, the #1 Crown Prince of the Qin dynasty, indeed had an extraordinary aura. In the Wuji continent, the strong were respected, especially in a former powerful capital like the Eastern Capital. The commoners all hoped for a powerful crown prince who could lead them to the position of a powerful country in the past. Thinking that this person was the future husband of the Eastern Capital's princess, the commoners tiptoed to look at him, and countless noble ladies spoke out in envy. Outside the palace, the Eastern Emperor, Dong Huang Tianqi, led the civil and military officials to welcome them. Dong Huang Ling, the Eastern capital's princess, was dressed in luxurious clothes. She had the most exquisite makeup on her face, and her beautiful face looked dignified and elegant. When she and Duguxiu stood together, they looked like a pair of jade. The fiancé served tea to Empress Dowager Situ and received a bow in front of the civil and military officials. According to the Eastern Emperor dynasty's etiquette, they would go to the Dongzhao Temple a few days ago to burn incense and bathe. 3 days later, the official wedding ceremony would be held. The Dongzhao Temple was an ancient temple in the eastern capital. The temple was surrounded by bamboo forests, and it was open to the public on normal days. For the wedding ceremony of Crown Prince Dugu and Dong Huang Ling, the Dongzhao Temple was closed to the public yesterday and no longer welcomed guests. Many checkpoints were set up inside and outside the temple. Even if outsiders had wings, it would be difficult for them to enter. After the fiancé's carriage arrived at the Dongzhao Temple, Duguxiu and Dong Huang Ling separated and were sent to different rooms by the palace's officials. According to the etiquette, the fiancé couldn't see each other in these 3 days. After Duguxiu got off the carriage, he impatiently took off his ceremonial attire. He was originally a martial artist and he hated this kind of complicated etiquette the most. Today, after listening to the etiquette officers reciting scriptures, he had been impatient for the entire day. A pair of slippery arms wrapped around Duguxiu's neck like water snakes, and she whispered into his ear, "Your Highness, I miss you." Duguxiu didn't wait to turn his head and pulled the woman into his embrace. Madame Qi Bai's face was blushing and she looked at him lovingly. "You little wench, you are also restless. Didn't I tell you to stay beside the princess and keep an eye on her?" Duguxiu stretched out his hand and pinched Madame Qi Bai's chin, enjoying the woman's smooth and clean touch. "Isn't it because I miss Crown Prince? Crown Prince is truly heartless. In order to marry Dong Huang Ling, he left me alone in the eastern capital." Madame Qi Bai was truly a stunner. Her skin was snow white, and her figure was perfect. Any man who saw her would be infatuated. While complaining, she slid into Duguxiu's embrace. Chapter 779. Gufeng hid himself in Dongzhao Temple for several days, and with great difficulty he finally found Dong Huang Ling. However, Dong Huang Ling was dressed like a married woman. Gufeng, who was looking at her from the side, felt very sad. However, he still didn't give up. He waited until late at night, and after confirming that Dong Huang Ling was alone, he snuck in. When Dong Huang Ling heard the commotion, she turned her head around mechanically. When she looked at Gufeng, her eyes were calm, and there wasn't the slightest bit of excitement. When she looked at Gufeng, it was as if she was looking at a stranger. "Who are you? You dare to barge into my residence in the middle of the night?" "Ling, what's wrong?" "I am Gufeng." Gufeng was very anxious and wanted to go up and explain himself. "Don't come over, otherwise I will call for help." Dong Huang Ling was like a bird that was startled by the twang of a bow. "Ling, don't be agitated. What's wrong with you? I am here to look for you. You cannot marry the crown prince of later Qin. He is not a good person." Gufeng was able to tell that there was something wrong with Dong Huang Ling. However, looking at her appearance, she was indeed the Ling that he yearned for day and night. Gufeng didn't notice anything wrong with Dong Huang Ling. He only thought that she was forced to pretend that she didn't know him. When Gufeng was pretending to be a little monk in Dongzhao Temple, when Duguxiu and Dong Huang Ling's carriage arrived at the temple, he also saw the crown prince of later Qin, Duguxiu. Gufeng was also intimidated by Duguxiu's aura. He also secretly felt that Duguxiu was the most suitable person for Dong Huang Ling. Just when Gufeng was about to give up and bid farewell to Dong Huang Ling for the last time, he unexpectedly saw Madame Qi Bai walking into Duguxiu's room. Not long later, ambiguous sounds came from the room. Although Gufeng didn't know much about the matters between men and women, when he heard the sounds, he knew what was going on inside. Duguxiu actually had an affair with another woman on the eve of his wedding with Ling. How could such a man be a good match for Dong Huang Ling? Gufeng was infuriated. If it weren't for the fact that he still had some rationality left, he would have rushed in and argued with Duguxiu. Fortunately, Gufeng's wisdom had matured over the past few years, and he knew that he shouldn't be impulsive. His mind was filled with thoughts of telling Dong Huang Ling about this matter and bringing her away from this place. Nonsense. Crown Prince Dugu is a man of striking appearance, a dragon among men. The two of us are a match made in heaven. Dong Huang Ling said. "Ling, wake up. Don't be deceived by that brat's flowery words. Gufeng anxiously went forward and pulled Dong Huanglinger. Dong Huanglinger was startled and revealed an extremely disgusted expression. "Guards, there's an assassin." The temple was quiet and secluded. Dong Huanglinger's shout could be heard clearly within several li of the temple. Right at this moment, Dugu Xiu and Madame Chi Bai arrived outside the house. Hearing the commotion, the two of them promptly kicked the door open and entered. Audacious! Where did this assassin come from? To actually dare to barge into Princess's room at night. Dugu Xiu looked over and saw a simple and honest-looking man pulling Dong Huanglinger. "I am not an assassin. I am Ling Er's senior brother, Gufeng. I am a student of the continent's magic elite camp." Gufeng's face and ears turned red. He still wanted to explain. "If you don't believe me, you can ask Ling Er." "Your Highness, do you know this person?" Madame Chi Bai pursed her lips and smiled. "Gufeng? Isn't that the infatuated brat who wrote a letter to Dong Huanglinger?" Unfortunately, his infatuation was misplaced. At this moment, not to mention a foolish brat who had an unrequited love for Dong Huanglinger, even if her biological father were to stand in front of her, Dong Huanglinger wouldn't be able to recognize him. "I don't know him." Dong Huanglinger coldly spat out those words, causing Gu Feng to feel as if he had fallen into a cold cave. "Ling Er." Gufeng shouted painfully. "Drag him out and kill him," Dugu Xiu ordered. Hearing the word kill, a trace of hesitation flashed past Dong Huangling's empty eyes. "Wait," Dong Huanglinger looked at Gufeng. She didn't know this man, but when Dugu Xiu said that he was going to kill him, she felt a throbbing pain in her head, and she couldn't help but hug her head. "Don't kill him, my head hurts." Dong Huanglinger's face turned pale and she couldn't help but tremble. Seeing this, Dugu Xiu gave Madame Chi Bai a glance. Madame Chi Bai understood and pretended to be concerned. "Your Highness, what happened to you?" "Men, this assassin must have scared the princess. Drag him out and kill him." Hearing the chaotic sounds beside her ears, Dong Huanglinger became even more flustered. She wanted to say something, but Madame Chi Bai, who was beside her, used her hand to tightly hold onto her hand. "Ling Er, just what did you all do to Ling Er?" Gufeng also realized that there was something wrong with Ling Er. Later Qin's soldiers were like wolves and tigers as they pounced toward Gufeng. Only then did Gufeng come back to his senses. At this moment of crisis, the experience that he had gained from the Heaven's Wings arena came into play. Gufeng realized that he was, after all, a student from the continent's elite camp. He chanted and released the sphere of light that he was most proficient in. Once the sphere of light was released, those martial artists seemed to have bumped into an invisible wall and were bounced back. "Tisk, it's actually a light magician. Looks like you really are from the continent's magic elite camp." Dugu Xiu showed some interest. He looked at Dong Huanglinger thoughtfully, then looked at the fearless Gufeng. "It's good that you know. Let me tell you, if you know what's good for you, then let Ling Er go. The continent's magic elite camp isn't to be trifled with. My teacher and other companions will be here very soon. People have quick wits." Gufeng usually wasn't very smart, but now he was. Gufeng was already regretting his actions. If he had known that he would encounter tonight's predicament, even if you beat him to death, he wouldn't have rashly left the continent's magic elite camp. Right now he really hoped that Yun Sheng or Abandoned were by his side. With their quick-wittedness, they would definitely think of a way to escape with Ling Er. "Hehe, Your Highness, this little magician is really interesting. He's clearly so scared that his legs are weak, yet he's still stubbornly holding on." Madame Chi Bai laughed. She had already seen through Gufeng's lies. Dugu Xiu shook his head and sighed. "Kid, you're called Gufeng, right? Your light magic is pretty good, but unfortunately in this prince's eyes, it's worthless. Seeing that you're the princess senior, I'll spare your life. Get out of Dongzhao Temple, and this prince will treat tonight's matter as if it never happened." A sky-rank light magician was extremely rare, even in the continent's magic elite camp. Killing Gufeng wasn't a big deal, but if they offended the continent's magic elite camp, then it was unnecessary. Not to mention, Dongzhao Temple was the eastern capital's Buddhist holy land. If they were to kill someone here, if it were to fall into the ears of the eastern capital's right chief minister and that group of old pedantic people, it would definitely become a topic of gossip. "If you want me to leave, then hand over Ling Er. You already have a woman, why are you still clinging onto Ling Er?" Gufeng looked at Madame Chi Bai, who was at the side. Looking at her charming appearance, if Ling Er were to marry him in the future, she would definitely fall out of favor. Thinking of this, Gufeng became even more determined to take Ling Er away. Chapter 780. Stubborn. Duguxiu didn't want to waste any more words. Duguxiu's left and right fists shook as he casually swung his fists. Popping sounds could be heard from the bones in his body. The power of his fists instantly caused the air to explode. Duguxiu didn't move, but his voice was already heard. His power was terrifying. Duguxiu's warrior realm was more than 10 times stronger than those warriors in the continent's warriors' elite camp. Hearing this, Gufeng's eyebrows twitched. He knew that he wasn't Duguxiu's opponent. However, when he thought of Donghuang Ling'er, he resisted the urge to run away. Gufeng circulated the magic power in his body and continuously strengthened the light sky sphere. Duguxiu's body flashed past like a shuttle. A strong gust of wind rushed towards Gufeng's light sky sphere. The fist wind turned into a black tiger with slanted eyes that roared furiously in mid-air, charging straight at Gufeng's heavenly light sphere. The black tiger opened its bloody mouth and bit onto the light sky sphere. Bang! Gufeng's light sky sphere was hit by the gust of wind. After shaking twice, it exploded. After Gufeng learned the light sky sphere, although he couldn't attack, he was invincible in terms of defense. However, who would have thought that the light sky sphere that he was so proud of would be broken by Duguxiu's punch? While he was shocked, he had already lost his protection. Duguxiu's second punch was already following him like a shadow, arriving in an instant. Suddenly, a commotion could be heard from outside. A guard shouted for help. Not good, the crown prince's house is on fire. Immediately after, a burst of fire could be heard from outside the house. Numerous thunder-like explosions could be heard from the neighboring houses. The monks in the Dongzhao temple panicked and hurriedly ran out of the courtyard. In an instant, the peaceful Dongzhao temple was like a pot of boiling porridge. It was a mess. Seeing this, Duguxiu no longer had the heart to kill Gufeng. He grabbed Gufeng and threw him to the guard. Look after him. A group of guards rushed in from outside. Your Highness, there are a few assassins outside. They are quite skilled. Hearing this, Duguxiu frowned and rushed out of the house with a few people. Madame Qi Bai dragged Donghuang Ling'er, who had a stupefied expression, and rushed out. Gufeng was escorted to the courtyard by several guards. When he saw the fire, he suddenly grinned. Yunxing and Gufeng must have come to save him. Ling'er could be saved. As long as Yunxing arrived, there would be a way to save Ling'er. At this moment, the temple was in chaos. Duguxiu rushed into his courtyard with a few armored guards. The courtyard, which was still in good condition a quarter of an hour ago, was now in ruins. Flames were everywhere. Duguxiu's personal luggage and some clothes were all placed in the house. The fire was not an ordinary fire. No matter how the imperial bodyguards and monks poured water on it, they could not put it out. Under the moonlight and starry sky, two masked mages in black robes stood in the dark night. They stood in the air, and the magic wings on their backs were very obvious. In the small Dongzhao temple of the eastern capital, two sky mages had come in one night. This in itself was a very unusual thing. According to Duguxiu's knowledge, even in the entire East Imperial dynasty, there might not be two sky mages. The light from the soul stones on the magic scepters in the hands of these two mages had yet to extinguish. A cluster of dazzling fireballs hit the house of the Dongzhao temple. Who are you? How dare you invade the crown prince's residence of the later Qin dynasty? Duguxiu condensed a pair of duki wings behind his back. He jumped up and fought against the two sky mages in the sky. These two sky mages were dressed as assassins. They used layers of black cloth to cover their faces. Duguxiu could not recognize their faces at all. He could not even tell their genders. After hearing Duguxiu's question, the male mage who was standing on the left and was emitting wind magic elements said, Duguxiu, you are the one I am looking for. As he spoke, he attacked Duguxiu with several magic spells. Poison. Duguxiu's gaze turned cold. This mage's magic spells were very special. They all contained poison. Duguxiu stopped abruptly. The duki around him formed a natural barrier to block the poisonous gas. However, the male mage's intention was not Duguxiu. In the blink of an eye, he cast several more magic spells and poisoned many of the guards on the ground. When the male mage attacked, the mage on his right had already attacked the ground. With a beautiful freezing spell, he froze the two male warriors who were holding Gufeng into ice piles. You want to save someone? That's easy. Duguxiu snorted and suddenly pushed out with his palm. In the air, a wave of do-chi rose like a rising tide and swept toward the male mage like a whirlwind. The male mage hurriedly used ground escape and barely dodged Duguxiu's attack. After Duguxiu got rid of the male mage, he swooped down and hit the other mage with his palm. At this moment, a gust of night wind blew. Duguxiu approached the mage, and a very comfortable fragrance faintly wafted from the mage's body. For some reason Duguxio's heart skipped a beat. He narrowed his eyes and fixed his gaze on the assassin mage. The mage's robe was very loose and he couldn't see his figure. His face was also covered very well. Only a small part of his neck and a small part of his face were exposed. However, the half of his face that was exposed shone like snow in the dark night. This kind of fair skin was different from the later Qing concubines like Madame Qi Bai. It wasn't smeared with powder. It was a kind of clean and tender white that men couldn't bear to part with. Then there were her eyes. Duguxio's body couldn't help but tremble. In an instant he recognized the identity of the assassin mage. Such intelligence with a bit of purity, like a pool of autumn water. A pair of clear eyes with a bit of a woman's charm. Who else could it be other than her? Yunxing. His anger was swallowed by ecstasy in an instant. Duguxio had already retracted his palm by half an inch and brushed it across Yunxing's chest. This action of retracting and brushing seemed casual. However, only someone with Duguxio's skills could do it. One must know that martial artists were different from mages. Martial artists' battle energy was incomparably fierce. Even if it didn't touch the body, it was enough to destroy rocks and split gold. To be able to retract and release battle energy freely, and to have a bit of flexibility amidst the fierceness, one had to be at least a martial emperor expert. Yunxing originally wanted a bandit to stall Duguxio for the time being. After she saved Gu Feng and Donghuang Linger, she would think of a way to escape. She didn't expect that after not seeing Duguxio for a few years, his strength would increase by leaps and bounds to such a level. His speed was so fast that it was unimaginable. Yunxing was shocked. Because of this shock, her chest was about to be touched by Duguxio. Duguxio's eyes were filled with evil. However, he could clearly see the trace of embarrassment and anger in Yunxing's eyes. The corner of Duguxio's lips twitched and there was a bit of ridicule. Chapter 781. Duguxio noticed the anger in Yunxing's eyes. His lips curled up and his smile widened. When his palm landed, Duguxio suddenly felt that something was wrong. Why was it hard? It turned out that in a split second, a dazzling golden figure had blocked in front of Duguxio, ruining the mood. Tycoon Jin, stop him. Yunxing ordered and Tycoon Jin tangled with Duguxio. There was another person? Duguxio had seen clearly that Yunxing and her accomplice were only two people. He didn't sense the aura of a third person. Where did this person come from? Duguxio didn't know that Tycoon Jin wasn't even human, so how could he have any aura? Tonight was a coincidence. Yunxing and Abandon used the identity of Hunter's Guild guards to patrol Dongzhao Temple. After finding out where Linger's house was, they planned to investigate it secretly. Who knew that they would bump into Gufeng and Duguxio? In a hurry, Yunxing and Abandon could only take the risk of a night attack to lure Duguxio out. Yunxing had been warned by Yi Baiming earlier, so she had been careful. She knew that it would be difficult for her and Abandon to save Ling and Gufeng, so she ordered Tycoon Jin to hide in the dark. Once they confronted Duguxio, they would catch him off guard and attack him. However, Yunxing didn't expect that the other party would see through her and Duguxio's identities. When Duguxio saw that Tycoon Jin had ruined his plans, he was enraged. He wanted nothing more than to split this assassin in half with a single palm strike. Since the other party wasn't Yunxing, he wouldn't be merciful. His attacks immediately changed and he attacked Tycoon Jin's vital points. He thought that he could kill the other party in a few moves. Who knew that after exchanging a few moves, Duguxio suddenly realized that this bodyguard, with a blurred face and a strange robe, was very difficult to deal with. Moreover, even if his opponent was swept by his douqi, he would be able to recover quickly. Duguxio was entangled with Tycoon Jin. How could the guards on the ground be a match for Yunxing and Abandon? The two of them were like the autumn wind sweeping away fallen leaves, killing many guards. When Qi saw that Madame Qi Bai was holding Linger hostage, he ordered her to hand her over. Madame Qi Bai covered her mouth and chuckled, "If you want to save someone, you have to get past me first." A crimson-red snake slithered out from her sleeves and pierced towards Abandon's wrist like an arrow. The crimson snake was extremely fast and its teeth contained a strong poison. Even if a martial sage was bitten, his entire body would immediately fester and turn into a puddle of rotten water. Madame Qi Bai had already used this method to kill quite a few enemies. She originally thought that once she bit down, that male mage assassin would definitely fall to the ground and die. Who would have thought that the other party was completely undecided? The scarlet snake bit his hand, and the latter reached out with his finger and caught the small snake in his hand. Courting death. A cold glint flashed past the eyes of the male mage. The small crimson snake was clamped into two by him. Madame Chi-Bai was so scared that she retreated a few steps. Using this chance, a bandit snatched Ling Er over. On the other side, Yun Sheng had already saved Gufeng. The courtyard was brightly lit, and many archers holding heavy crossbows were on standby, aiming at Yun Sheng and the others. These archers were all personally trained by Duguxiu. Their bows and arrows were specially made with the bones of demonic beasts, and the arrowheads of each arrow were coated with poison. As long as Duguxiu gave the order, these archers would immediately turn into a hornet's nest. They were the best tools to kill assassins. However, Duguxiu didn't give the order. Even when the four of them disappeared in the fluctuation of magic, the archers could only wait. Crown Prince, why did you let that assassin go? Madame Chi-Bai was extremely anxious. He could obviously kill those assassins, so why didn't he give the order? Also, when he was fighting with that thin and weak mage just now, why did the Crown Prince suddenly retreat? Madame Chi-Bai knew Duguxiu's skills the best. That assassin just now, although his magic was a bit tricky with Duguxiu's current strength, it was enough for him to capture the assassin within 3 moves. Moreover, Duguxiu also let people save Donghuang Ling Er. This was completely unlike Duguxiu's style of doing things. Duguxiu remained silent, and his gaze was still fixed on the place where the four of them disappeared. Send people to seal off the news. No one is allowed to spread the news of the princess going missing. Duguxiu's eyes couldn't help but be covered with a thick layer of darkness. Does Donghuang Ling Er still have the snake parasite that you planted in her body? Duguxiu asked in a deep voice. Yes, as long as this slave activates the snake parasite, she will listen to my control. Crown Prince, are we going to kill those assassins who don't know what's good for them? Just now, Madame Chi-Bai didn't go head-to-head with those mages, because she was confident in finding Donghuang Ling Er. Immediately send people to find the left Prime Minister. Duguxiu noticed that Yun Sheng and the others were very familiar with the layout of the temple. Moreover, the timing of Yun Sheng's appearance tonight was too coincidental. Yun Sheng was a citizen of Zhou State, so it was impossible for her to be so familiar with the Dongzhao Temple in the eastern capital. Someone must have cooperated with her from the inside. After the left Prime Minister got the news, he climbed down from the bed of his favorite concubine and hurried over. Your Highness, I heard that there were assassins? Who set up the defense of the Dongzhao Temple? Duguxiu was sure that Yun Sheng and the others were definitely still in the eastern capital. The right Prime Minister invited people from the Hunters Guild to set up the defense. Your Highness, you suspect that the assassins tonight were done by the right Prime Minister and the Hunters Guild. After the left Prime Minister heard this, he hurriedly sent people to investigate. These damn assassins are really bold. They even dared to kidnap the princess. Your Highness, don't worry. Even if I have to turn the whole eastern capital upside down, I will catch these assassins and cut them into pieces, the left Prime Minister vowed solemnly. He had thought that the princess's marriage was already settled. Who would have thought that a group of assassins would appear halfway? Don't hurt them. I want them alive. Duguxiu's words surprised the left Prime Minister and Madame Chi-Bai. Madame Chi-Bai and the left Prime Minister looked at each other. This was not like the Dark Crown Prince's style. It should be known that anyone who offended the Dark Crown Prince would end up in a miserable state. Especially the assassins. The last assassin who tried to assassinate Duguxiu was cut into pieces and fed to the demon beasts. Or could it be that this group of people had some special background? However, the left Prime Minister did not dare to ask Duguxiu even if he had 10 times the courage of a leopard. The left Prime Minister searched the whole city that night. Neither the right Prime Minister's mansion nor the Hunters Guild found any news about the princess, Gufeng, and the others. Those people seemed to have disappeared from the world. There was no trace of them in the inns, restaurants, or houses. The left Prime Minister had no choice but to secretly release the news and order the whole city to be locked down. They had to find the princess and the others within 3 days, which was the time for bathing and burning incense. Chapter 782. While the entire eastern capital was in chaos, Gu Feng was anxiously waiting in Donghuang Ling Er's bedroom in the eastern capital's royal palace. The most dangerous place was also the safest place. When Yun Sheng and the others left Dongzhao Temple, they initially wanted to use the Hunters Guild's power to hide. But at the last moment, Yun Sheng chose to turn back and sneak into the eastern capital's imperial palace. Donghuang Ling Er was in Dongzhao Temple, and there were only 2 maids in her palace. Yun Sheng easily used the corpse puppet technique to subdue those maids. Hiding in the palace, they managed to avoid the frantic search of the left minister and the others. Yunxing checked and found that Donghuang Ling Er's appearance was very strange. Although she could speak and move, her eyes were empty, and she couldn't recognize Gufeng. She was obviously being controlled by someone. Yunxing also tried to use the corpse puppet technique to control Ling Er, but she found that Ling Er didn't have any reaction to her corpse puppet technique. Yunxing couldn't figure out the reason for this phenomenon. At this moment, Tyrant Jean was guarding outside and sneaking into the imperial palace to gather information. In the palace, only Yunxing, Gufeng, and the maids who used to serve Donghuang Ling Er were left. Yunxing used the corpse puppet technique to interrogate the maids, and she roughly knew what happened. According to the maids, when Ling Er just returned to the imperial palace, everything was normal. But ever since that day when she was sent back by Madame Qi Bai, something was wrong. Donghuang Ling Er also ignored the maids who were close to her, and spent all her time with that woman called Madame Qi Bai. The strangest thing was that ever since that day Donghuang Ling Er accepted the arrangement and agreed to marry Duguxiu. It must be that woman called Qi Bai who did this. She is very evil and she and Duguxiu are a pair of adulterers. Seeing Ling Er's wooden appearance, Gufeng felt sour in his heart. Calm down. I'll think of something. It was the first time that Yunxing had encountered such a thorny problem. She had also tried to get the little elven queen to heal Donghuang Ling Er. However, the elven clan's healing techniques were completely useless against Donghuang Ling Er's current condition. The treatment came to a standstill. Qi soon brought back news that Minister Zhua and his men had turned the entire eastern capital upside down, searching from house to house. What they said to the public was not that the princess was missing, but that a thief had sneaked into the Dongzhao temple last night and stolen important property. It seemed unrealistic to leave Dongdu in a few days. Yunxing and the others could only stay in the palace for the time being. On one hand, they were waiting for Yunxing to find out the cause of Donghuang Ling Er's illness. On the other hand, they hoped that the search would end as soon as possible. Yunxing and the others were hiding in the imperial palace. Prime Ministers was searched for them, but he couldn't find any clues. Duguxiu's temper was getting worse and worse. On the evening of the second day, the left Prime Minister still had a bitter face as he went to find Madame Qi Bai. What's wrong? You still can't find her? Madame Qi Bai had a leisurely look on her face. Madam, you have to save me this time. If this continues, the crown prince will peel off my old skin sooner or later. Prime Ministers will wipe the cold sweat on his forehead. Prime Ministers will, why are you so worried? Actually, it's not hard to find the princess. After tonight, you will be able to find the princess's whereabouts. Madame Qi Bai smiled. Hearing this, Prime Minister Zhou couldn't help but smile. Madam, could it be that you have a method? Why didn't you say it earlier? This method can only be used after tonight. It's useless to say it earlier. Madame Qi Bai said with a smile. Prime Minister Zhou, every 24 hours, the princess must take a special kind of pill that I specially made. If she doesn't take the pill, she will lose control and kill the people around her. Hearing this, Prime Minister Zhou said, Madam, did you tell the Crown Prince about this? His Highness seems to want to capture those assassins alive. If the Crown Prince finds out that you made this decision without his permission, I'm afraid that he won't be happy. Madame Qi Bai's smile faded bit by bit. What? Do you think that the Crown Prince will blame me for the death of a few insignificant assassins? Prime Minister Zhou hurriedly said, I wouldn't dare. I'm just thinking for you. Madame Qi Bai sneered in her heart. As a woman, how could she not feel that the Crown Prince's attitude towards the assassins this time was very unusual, especially the assassin who had fought with him earlier. Although she didn't see the face clearly, Madame Qi Bai was sure that the assassin must be a woman. Moreover, it was a very beautiful woman. Therefore, although she had a way to find out the whereabouts of those assassins tonight, she didn't want to inform the Crown Prince. In the middle of the night, Madame Qi Bai sent her servants away. She sat down cross-legged and took out a small and delicate flute from her bosom. The flute looked very special. It was only the length of a finger and was entirely green. Madame Qi Bai gently blew the flute. A very strange sound came from the flute. This kind of sound was not very obvious at night. Madame Qi Bai blew the flute 3 times before putting it down. In her mind, a scene appeared. They are actually hiding in the imperial palace. These assassins are quite smart. Madame Qi Bai sneered. Yunxing and the others who were hiding in the imperial palace began their daily meditation as usual. Outside the palace, Tycoon Jean was keeping watch. After Donghuang Ling Er's consciousness became muddled, she was very quiet most of the time. Therefore Yun Sheng and the others didn't pay too much attention to her. Around midnight, Dong Huang Ling who had been sitting there all this time suddenly opened her eyes wide. She quietly took out her magic scepter and walked towards Yun Sheng and the others who were meditating. If one were to carefully observe her eyes, they would discover that her eyes were different from usual. Her eyes were emitting a faint green light. Her gaze slowly moved from the three people who were meditating and finally her gaze landed on Yun Sheng's face. When she saw Yun Sheng's appearance, Dong Huang Ling whose consciousness was completely controlled by Madame Qi Bai, revealed the same jealousy as Madame Qi Bai. Madame Qi Bai was a very beautiful and enchanting woman. When she saw Du Guxiu for the first time, she had already fallen in love with him. At the same time, she also understood Du Guxiu very well. This man was cold and emotionless. He was a man who could accomplish great things. He would not be moved by any woman. Therefore, even though she knew that Du Guxiu was going to marry Dong Huang Ling, Madame Qi Bai didn't mind it. However, after she met Yun Sheng, her initial confidence began to waver. This female mage, just by sitting there quietly, was enough to attract everyone's attention. No wonder Du Guxiu would lose his composure earlier. This woman must be killed. The magic scepter in Dong Huang Ling's hand shone with magical radiance. She raised the magic scepter and aimed it at Yun Sheng's head. Chapter 783. Dong Huang Ling raised her magic scepter, and a purple lightning bolt was about to strike down. At this moment, the little snake, Little Green, who had been meditating at the side, sensed that something was amiss and stuck its head out from under Abandon's sleeve. With a pew sound, Little Green's body shot towards Dong Huang Ling. Little Green bit onto Dong Huang Ling's hand. Ah! Dong Huang Ling let out a scream. The magic was interrupted. The three people who were still immersed in their meditation opened their eyes alertly. Ling Abandon quickly let go of Little Green's hand. Seeing Dong Huang Ling in such a state, Gu Feng's heart ached. Little Green wouldn't attack people for no reason. Ling must have done something just now. Little Green, who was raised by Abandon, was very intelligent. It recognized a few of Abandon's good friends. Hearing Abandon's command, Little Green stopped biting and obediently climbed onto Abandon's shoulder. Little Green stuck out its tongue as if it was telling Abandon what happened. Little Green said that just now Ling suddenly wanted to do something to Yun Sheng. That's why it bit her. After hearing what Little Green said, Abandon held onto his magic scepter and stared at Dong Huang Ling with vigilance. Little Green's teeth carried poison. Those who were bitten by it would be paralyzed and lose their ability to move. The three of them only knew that Tycoon Jean was keeping watch outside. They didn't expect that Dong Huang Ling would suddenly do something. I didn't expect that you all still have a trick up your sleeves. Dong Huang Ling raised her head. On her face there was an enchanting smile. It was completely different from the usual Dong Huang Ling. She's not Ling. Yun Sheng was on guard. You're the woman beside Du Guxiu? You're quite smart. No wonder the Crown Prince cares so much about you. Under the astonished gazes of the three people, Dong Huang Ling stood up gracefully. Little Green's poison didn't have any effect on her. As Dong Huang Ling spoke, she sized up Yun Sheng with a gaze as if she was examining an opponent. When she saw Yun Sheng's spirited black eyes, her face darkened. What a pair of bewitching eyes. No wonder Du Guxiu hadn't come to look for her these few days. His soul must have been bewitched by this fox-like woman. Yun Sheng also sensed that the Dong Huang Ling in front of her was Du Guxiu's concubine. None of her words and actions were Dong Huang Ling. What was going on? Yun Sheng had already checked earlier. This was indeed Ling and she was not under any magic illusion. You shameless woman. What did you do to Ling Gu Feng's heart ached when he saw his beloved being controlled by someone else. TSK, are you feeling heartache for her? Then, how about you help me kill that girl beside you and I'll let her go, allowing the two of you to live together forever. Dong Huang Ling said with ill intentions. You're dreaming. Yun Sheng and Ling are good friends. She definitely won't let Yun Sheng get hurt. Gu Feng was both anxious and angry. Then there's nothing I can do. If you don't do it, I can only do it to your beloved. Dong Huang Ling unhurriedly took out a small dagger. What are you planning to do? Gu Feng and Yun Sheng both became nervous. Dong Huang Ling raised her hand and used the dagger to cut her wrist. Immediately blood flowed out. Did you see that? If you don't do it, I'll cut the princess bit by bit. I won't feel any pain no matter what. You crazy woman. Gu Feng was unable to restrain his anger. He acted as if he was going to go up and fight with Dong Huangling. Don't come over. Otherwise I'll immediately cut your throat, and your beloved will lose her life. Dong Huanglinger's face was sinister. She knew that Gu Feng wouldn't dare to take the risk and harm Dong Huanglinger's life. Seeing that the two sides were in a deadlock, Yunxing thought for a moment, then suddenly said, "All right, I can use my life to exchange for Linger's life." Yunxing. Qi frowned and stopped Yunxing. "It's fine." Yunxing nodded at Qi. Dong Huanglinger's expression was a bit flattered. She didn't expect that there would actually be someone stupid enough to use her own life to exchange for her friend's life. This woman is really stupid. She really doesn't know. Could it be that the crown prince is only interested in her appearance? You can't expect me to kill myself, right? Do it. Yunxing spread out her hands and there wasn't a trace of fear on her face. You guys don't stop her. Dong Huangling was skeptical. She first asked Yunxing to put down her magic scepter, then walked forward step by step. Only when she was only 2 to 3 steps away from Yunxing did Dong Huangling finally relax. At such a distance, even if she chanted a magic spell, it would be too late. Go and die, stupid woman. Dong Huanglinger's dagger was aimed at Yunxing's throat. Bang! Dong Huangling was sent flying, and the dagger in her hand fell to the ground. A golden figure moved like lightning and blocked the fatal stab. It was that mysterious bodyguard again. Previously when he fought with the Dark Prince he was very skilled. He came and went without a trace and it was impossible to find where he was hiding. Dong Huangling still wanted to struggle and snatch back that dagger, but she was pressed to the ground by Tycoon Jean. Damn brat, you dare to play tricks? I will make you all regret it. Dong Huangling grinned malevolently, then fiercely bit down on her tongue. Tycoon Jin's eyes were sharp, and he quickly stuffed his hand into Dong Huanglinger's mouth. Dong Huangling felt that her teeth were almost crushed. The hand in her mouth wasn't a human hand at all. Just what kind of monster is this? Dong Huangling was stunned. Yunxing Little Qing told me that Ling might have been poisoned by a snake-venomous insect. Qi, who was observing from the side, suddenly said. Dong Huanglinger's situation was very special. She wasn't poisoned by a venomous insect, nor was it an illusion. Just when the few of them were at a loss, Qi finally got some clues from Little Qing. What is a snake-venomous insect? Yunxing had never heard of such a special venomous insect technique in the boundless continent. That's right, Qi, quickly tell us, how do we cure this venomous insect? Gu Feng looked at Dong Huanglinger's appearance and his heart felt sour, so he begged Qi. Yunxing noticed that when Qi mentioned the snake-venomous insect, a trace of panic flashed past the eyes of Dong Huangling, who was originally very restless on the ground. Don't be anxious, let me ask Little Qing again. Qi and Little Qing communicated, for a while, and finally understood what the snake-venomous insect was. Yunxing asked Tycoon Jean to let go of her first. I have something to ask her. After hearing what Little Qing said, Qi's expression became serious. He walked to the front of Dong Huangling and looked down at her. Tycoon Jean let go of Dong Huangling, but he used his qi to bind her 4 limbs, making her unable to struggle. If I didn't guess wrongly, you should be a descendant of the Bashi tribe, right? Qi stared at Dong Huangling. Chapter 784. A descendant of the 8 Desolates? A member of the Ba Serpent clan? Yunxing and Gu Feng did not expect that the enchanting woman beside Duguxiu was actually a descendant of the 8 Desolates. Although she tried her best to hide it, it was undeniable that Dong Huanglinger's expression became unnatural when she heard the name Ba Serpent. I don't know what you're talking about. What Ba Serpent? In the mainland, the descendants of the 8 Desolates were always kept a secret. Once it was proven that Madame Qi Bai was a descendant of the 8 Desolates, what awaited her would be the pursuit of all the strong people in the boundless mainland. You don't have to deny it. Linger was indeed poisoned by a snake goo. It is a very special living goo. Only the descendants of the Ba Serpent clan, who are descendants of the 8 Desolates, know about it. If Little Qing did not mention it, Qi would not have known about the existence of such a goo. Every descendant of the Ba Serpent, regardless of gender, would feed a female snake with their blood when they were born. It would take 10 years for this type of female snake to reach adulthood. After reaching adulthood, the female snake would lay a snake egg every other year. The descendants of the Ba Serpent could use this type of snake egg to poison people. When the poisoned person swallowed the snake egg, they would be fine as long as they consumed the blood pill made from the blood of the Ba Serpent clan's descendants. The snake egg would not hatch. However, if the poisoned person did not consume the blood pill within 24 hours, the small snakes in the snake egg would hatch by themselves due to the lack of nutrients. Once the snake egg hatched, it would slowly devour the person's consciousness. After 72 hours, if the person still could not find a way to cure the poison, the person's consciousness would be completely devoured by the small snakes. In the end, the person would become a puppet under the control of the master of the poison. Damn it! You actually poisoned Ling? Gu Feng angrily grabbed Madame Chi by. Kid, who are you? You even know about the secret of the Ba Serpent clan? Dong Huang Ling did not deny it. She was telling the truth. However, so what if he knew? Knowing about the snake Gu did not mean he could neutralize it. Gu Feng, now is not the time to be excited. The most important thing is to find a way to save Ling. Yun Sheng was not familiar with the Bahuang clan's special Gu method. If Madame Chi Bai did not agree, once the 72-hour passed, Ling would really be beyond saving. Haha, dream on. Let me tell you, other than me no one can save this girl. Also, don't even think about extorting a confession. Otherwise, the one who will suffer will be the princess. I advise you all to obediently send the princess back to the crown prince's side. Dong Huang Linger laughed. Even if Abandon knew the origin of the snake venom, he would never know how to neutralize it. Yun Sheng, it's very difficult to neutralize the snake venom. The host needs to control the female snake to summon the little snake that's hiding in the victim's body. Abandon didn't have any ideas either. Abandon, did you just say something about summoning? Is the little snake in Linger's body also a demonic beast? Yun Sheng's eyes lit up. It seemed like the snake venom was similar to the summoning of demonic beast. It's a demonic beast. Yun Sheng, what do you want to do? Abandon didn't understand why Yun Sheng would ask such a question. Since it's a demonic beast, then it's simple. You all go and guard outside first. I will try to find the little snake. Yun Sheng had a face full of confidence. Gu Feng was still a little doubtful. Yun Sheng, why don't you send Linger back? Don't want her to suffer. Gu Feng, you still don't believe me. Don't worry, go and guard outside. I promise that before dawn, I will return you a lively Ling. Yun Sheng's confidence infected Gu Feng. He nodded and walked out of the door with abandon. Stupid girl, do you think you can find the little snake? Let me tell you, other than me no one else can find the little snake. Even if you cut the princess open you still won't be able to find it. Dong Huang Linger's face was also filled with confidence. However, in the next moment, Dong Huang Linger's face revealed a shocked expression. Because she saw that Yun Sheng took out a ring and wore it on her finger. That was a ring that only summoners would have. You are a summoner? Dong Huang Linger shouted out. Madame Chi Bai had always thought that Yun Sheng was only a mage. But she was actually a summoner. Towards summoners, the Ba Huang tribe had always had a very complicated feeling. Because although the Ba Huang tribe had already transformed into human form, their ancestors were demonic beasts. Summoners were the group of people that demonic beasts feared and hated the most. No wonder she would ask if the little snake was a demonic beast just now. As long as it was a demonic beast, summoners would be able to contract and enslave it. The fear only lasted for a short while. Dong Huang Linger mocked. So what if you are a summoner? The little snake has already been enslaved by me. It is impossible for you to contract it. As a top-notch demonic beast, Bakra Orcs, although Madame Chi Bai was not a summoner, she was still able to use her demonic beast's aura to enslave a large number of snakes. This kind of enslavement, compared to a summoner's contract, was obviously inferior. Most of the demonic beasts that summoners could contract were ownerless demonic beasts. Of course, some extremely powerful summoners were also able to contract demonic beasts that had already been contracted. However, there was a prerequisite, and that was that the summoner who was able to contract demonic beasts must have extremely high summoning abilities. Also, their own soul must be strong enough to withstand the backlash from another summoner. Madame Chi Bai had already hidden in the boundless world for many years. Most of the famous summoners in the world were from the Zhao state. Even if there were some freelance summoners, their abilities would definitely not reach the level where they could contract her demonic beasts. Whether I can contract it or not, I will know once I try. Yun Sheng curled her lips, and there was a hint of mockery in her eyes. If it was in the past, she really did not have the confidence to contract demonic beasts. However, everything was different after she entered the Celestial Fox tomb and accidentally obtained the corpse puppet technique of the Celestial Fox people Long Fox Yen. Yun Sheng's summoner's standard had already increased greatly because of the corpse puppet technique and the increase in the abilities of the demonic beasts under her command. Now, even if she faced a commander-level demonic beast, she could still contract it successfully without using the summoning demon hand. If she used the summoning demon hand, she was even confident that she could contract a king-level demonic beast. She, Yunsheng, did not even care about a mere little snake that was enslaved by the Ba-Serpent clan. A summoning magic array enveloped Dong Huangling air. As the light of this magic array became brighter and brighter, Yunsheng's pupils slowly changed. Her chanting also became faster and faster. Initially, Dong Huangling air, who was trapped, still had some disdain. However, as the magic waves of the magic array became stronger and stronger, a bone-chilling fear emerged from the bottom of her heart. Thanks to the few people in the group who helped me catch the bugs. This article is guaranteed to be at least 8,000. Most of the chapters are basically tipped with tickets. There will be more chapters in the future. I am so busy at the end of the year, so I will take a break this month. Chapter 785. Dong Huanglinger had a feeling that her soul had been seen through. The girl in front of her seemed to have seen through her with her pair of black eyes. She was no more than 10 years old. How is this possible? You. Dong Huanglinger cried out. Dong Huanglinger's Dharma soul was revealed. Yunsheng took a closer look and saw a small snake attached to Dong Huanglinger's Dharma soul. It was a small green snake that was about the same size as Little Green. As if it had felt the fluctuations of a summoner, the small snake moved its head anxiously. So it was hiding in your Dharma soul. No wonder I couldn't find it. After seeing the small snake, Yunsheng's black eyes darkened, and the chanting from her mouth became even faster. In her body, the powerful power of her five-colored Dharma soul was trying to control the small snake. Dong Huanglinger gritted her teeth and uttered a series of words that were hard to understand. In an instant, the magical fluctuations of Yunsheng and Dong Huanglinger spread out in the room. As if there was a strong wind, the curtains in the room fluttered. Outside the room, Gu Feng and Qi heard the movements in the room. Gu Feng couldn't hold it in and wanted to barge in. Don't go in. Qi stopped Gu Feng. Trust Yunsheng. Gu Feng gritted his teeth and suppressed the impulse in his heart. That small snake had a confused look on its face. Obviously, it didn't understand why there were two commands controlling it. For a moment, it didn't know which command it should listen to. In the beginning, Dong Huanglinger's magical power had the upper hand. But as time passed, the power of Yunsheng's five-elemental Dharma soul became stronger and stronger. Dong Huanglinger could only feel that her magical power was losing ground. Too scary. Just where did this girl come from? Her Dharma soul is so powerful that it's unimaginable. Suddenly, an ice-cold magical power attacked Dong Huanglinger. She felt that her consciousness was swallowed up in an instant. Hiss! Under the influence of the two powerful magical powers, the small snake finally couldn't hold it in and let out a sharp hiss. It rolled to the ground as if it had been burned by a raging fire. Ah! Dong Huangling! With a miserable shriek, she collapsed onto the ground. Unable to hold himself back any longer, Gu Feng rushed in. Abandonment followed closely behind, rushing in. When Gu Feng saw the little snake on the ground and Dong Huanglinger who had collapsed onto the ground, Gu Feng hurriedly helped her up. The little snake on the ground still wanted to escape. On Qi's shoulder, Little Green bit the little snake hard with a swoosh. After Little Green bit the small snake to death, it opened its jaws and swallowed the small snake that was about the same size as it. Its face was full of satisfaction. In Dongzhao Temple, Madame Qi Bai, who was sitting cross-legged, let out a blood-curdling scream and rolled down from the couch. Her movements alerted the maidservants outside. When the maidservants saw this, they were terrified and hurriedly informed Duguxiu. When Crown Prince Duguxiu arrived, he found that Madame Qi Bai's hair was disheveled and her face was pale. She had spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. Qi Bai, what happened? Duguxiu hurriedly carried Madame Qi Bai. It was as if she had aged a few years after he saw her. Her originally enchanting face was filled with pain. She didn't expect that she, who had always prided herself on being smart, would actually fall into the hands of a little girl at this juncture. Right now, she could only inform Duguxiu and ask him to capture that group of people. Your Highness the Crown Prince, those people are in the Imperial Palace. Quickly go and catch them. Madame Qi Bai forcefully suppressed her anger and finally finished speaking. Suddenly, she felt a stabbing pain in her heart. Her eyes rolled back and she fainted. Only now did Duguxiu know that Yunsheng and the others, whom he had been trying to find, were actually hiding in the Imperial Palace. Although he was furious that Qi Bai didn't inform him earlier, Duguxiu could only immediately order people to find an imperial physician to take care of Madame Qi Bai. As for himself, he personally picked 300 guards and rushed towards the imperial palace. However, when Duguxiu arrived at the eastern capital's imperial palace, the imperial palace was already empty. There was no trace of Yun Sheng and Dong Huangling. Damn it, Yun Sheng, this crown prince doesn't believe that you can hide to the ends of the earth. Duguxiu's complexion was ashen. He punched a pillar. The pillar that required two people to hug together was actually broken into two by his punch. At this moment, Yun Sheng and the others were hurriedly leaving the imperial palace under the cover of the night. After getting rid of Madame Qi Bai's control, Yun Sheng understood that Duguxiu would arrive very soon. Fortunately, earlier, Yun Sheng had already heard from the palace maids that there was a secret passage in the imperial garden that was specially used for eunuchs and palace maids to leave the palace. Yun Sheng immediately decided to leave the eastern capital with Ling Er. After getting rid of Madame Qi Bai's control, Dong Huangling was very weak. Due to the snake parasite's control, Dong Huangling's magic soul was devoured to a certain extent. She was muddle-headed and could only barely recognize Yun Sheng. However, it was difficult for her to even speak, let alone use magic. With the support of Yun Sheng and Tyrant Jean, she rushed out of the eastern capital. The few of them hurried through the night. After leaving the eastern capital, they entered a relatively safe forest outside the city. At this moment, the sky was already bright. Yun Sheng ordered Tyrant Jean to go out and take a look at Dong Huangling's condition. Yun Sheng, why is Ling still muddle-headed? Didn't you say that the snake parasite's control was already broken? Gu Feng wiped the sweat on Linger's forehead. Looking at Linger's weak and powerless appearance, Gu Feng wished that he could bear the pain in her place. It should be because her magic soul was devoured, which affected her divine sense. With her condition, even if she recovers, I'm afraid she can't be a magician anymore. Yun Sheng sighed and said this with difficulty. Ling Er's condition wasn't optimistic. Her condition was like a patient with a brain injury in modern times. Whether she could recover or not depended on her own willpower. If her willpower was strong enough, she might be able to recover one day. However, she could only live like a normal person. Hearing this, Gu Feng and Qi fell silent. Why don't we bring her back to the continent's magic elite camp and let the elders take a look at her? I'll think of a way to concoct some potions that can nourish her magic soul. Yun Sheng looked sad when she saw her good friend's condition. The snake parasite of the Ba-Serpent clan was really harmful. Looking at Ling Er's miserable state, Yun Sheng was very angry that she didn't kill Madame Qi Bai just now. Unfortunately, she wasn't Duguxiu's opponent now. If she met Madame Qi Bai again, she definitely wouldn't let that witch off. No, Yun Sheng Qi, I plan to take Ling Er away. Gu Feng made up his mind and suddenly said. Chapter 786. Gu Feng's words stunned Yun Sheng and abandoned. Gu Feng, what did you say? You want to leave with Ling Er? Yun Sheng knew that Gu Feng was in pain. But even so, she didn't agree with Gu Feng taking Ling Er away. Gu Feng, she needs better treatment. Abandon also knew that Gu Feng must have gone through an intense struggle to accept the fact that Ling Er had become like this. Even if she recovers, what can she do? With her personality, she will probably return to the eastern capital. Also, the elders might not agree to take her in. Gu Feng wiped the corners of his eyes and held back his tears. Yun Sheng and Abandon were speechless. Actually, they might have thought of what Gu Feng said. The mainland's magic elite camp was very powerful, but it wasn't powerful enough to contend with later Qin. Dong Huangling was the princess of the eastern capital, and she was already engaged to Duguxiu. This was a fact that was acknowledged by the entire mainland. If they secretly harbored Ling Er, it would be equivalent to making an enemy of the eastern capital and later Qin. Taking a step back, even if Ling Er was cured and she could no longer practice magic, her mother and brother were still in Duguxiu's hands. She would definitely do everything she could to save her family. In that case, Ling Er's final outcome would still be to marry Duguxiu and suffer for the rest of her life. But Gu Feng, have you ever thought that if you leave, it would be equivalent to giving up everything? Abandon sighed. Gu Feng and Yun Sheng had known each other for many years. Gu Feng's family background and strength were the weakest among the three. He was also the most hardworking among them. Before meeting Ling Er, Gu Feng's life goal was very simple. He only hoped that one day he could become a famous light mage in the continent and help his family escape from poverty. After joining the mainland's magic elite camp, his dream gradually came true. He was about to become the most outstanding light magician after the dazzling light magician. But at this time he chose to give up. Abandon felt that it wasn't worth it for Gu Feng. How could Yunxing not think the same way? However, Ling Er and Gu Feng were her close friends. She also understood that Gu Feng's decision was the best way to help Ling Er. Gu Feng loves Ling Er very much. He will do everything he can to cherish Ling Er. Although Ling Er was muddle-headed right now, it was also because of this that she could forget her identity as the princess of the eastern capital. For so many years, this noble identity was a kind of shackle to Donghuang Ling Er. She respected their decision as long as Ling Er and Gu Feng could be happy. I'm a selfish person. I don't have much ambition. I just want to protect Ling Er and let her live happily. No matter how short these days are, I have no regrets. After making up his mind, Gu Feng left with Ling Er, Yunxing and Qi. For the time being, he hadn't decided where to go with Ling Er. Perhaps he would go to his hometown, or perhaps he would go to a small village with beautiful scenery and no disputes. You two don't send me off. I will definitely contact you when I find a place to stay. Gu Feng reluctantly bid farewell to his two friends. Perhaps he was afraid that the scene would be too sad. Gu Feng forced a smile. Yunxing, the luckiest thing that has happened to me in my life is meeting you. You've helped me so much that just a word of thanks isn't enough. I can only pray that you can defeat all the competitors in the next mission. Gu Feng grinned and laughed. Yunxing's eyes reddened. She vaguely remembered the stuttering Gu Feng from back then. The two of them have known each other for many years. Thinking about it now, it felt like an instant. Abandon, you are my good brother. You have to work hard. Gu Feng said. He first looked at Yunxing, then winked at Abandon. Abandon's ears turned red. The matter of him liking Yunxing had always been a secret between him and Gu Feng. No matter how far away the farewell was, there would always be an end. Gu Feng took Ling Er and said goodbye to Yunxing and the others. He set foot on the path he had chosen to pursue. Yunxing and Qi sent them off with their eyes until they could no longer see Gu Feng's figure. Then they sighed and looked away. I didn't expect Gu Feng to be the bravest among the three of us. Yunxing asked herself. If she encountered such a thing, she probably wouldn't be able to do what Gu Feng did. I'm very envious of him. Qi looked at Yunxing beside him thoughtfully. Let's go back to the mainland's magic elite camp first. I think we have made a big mistake this time. Yunxing smiled bitterly. With Duguxiu's intelligence, he would definitely think that the assassin that day had something to do with the Hunters Guild. At that time, he would probably find the mainland's magic elite camp immediately. If they didn't hurry, Duguxiu's people would have found the mainland's magic elite camp first. At that time, it would be hard to tell who was right and who was wrong. Yunxing's guess wasn't wrong. After Duguxiu couldn't find anyone in the palace, he immediately investigated the defenses of Dongzhao Temple. From the right chief minister, he investigated the Hunters Guild. Finally, he found out that Yunxing and Abandon were both from the mainland's magic elite camp. He didn't expect that Yunxing would go to the magic elite camp in the few years when there was no news of her. Thinking back to that night when the two of them met again, Duguxiu was angry, but his heart was also itching. Damn Yunxing. This woman was his natural nemesis. Every time she would ruin his plans. But the more she was like this, the more he itched for her. He hadn't seen Yunxing for several years. What had she become? Thinking of that pair of seductive black eyes under the night sky, Duguxiu's body couldn't help but heat up. Duguxiu was immersed in his own thoughts, completely forgetting that he was in Madame Qi Bai's room. Your Highness, this medicine is so bitter. Madame Qi Bai, who had been severely injured by Yunxing's 5-elemental Dharma spirit, had already recovered 80 to 90% after the imperial physician's treatment. At this moment, she looked like a sickly beauty, lying on the bed and acting coquettishly, asking Duguxiu to feed her medicine. Who knew that Duguxiu held the medicine bowl in his hand and didn't move for a long time. His face was gloomy and uncertain, and she didn't know where his soul had flown to. Madame Qi Bai could only prop herself up, half leaning on Duguxiu's body as she asked in a delicate voice. Duguxiu suddenly stood up and threw the medicine to the palace maid at the side. If you don't drink it, then throw it away. There was obviously some anger in his tone. He hadn't settled the score with Madame Qi Bai yet. He already knew from the left chief minister that Madame Qi Bai had a way to find the whereabouts of Yunxing and the others. But he didn't know what this woman was thinking to actually hide it and not report it. Otherwise, Yunxing definitely wouldn't be able to escape from under his nose. Just thinking of this, Duguxiu wished he could strangle Madame Qi Bai to death. Chapter 787. Duguxiu's temperament was cold. Towards women, even the women that he doted on, he was temperamental. In his opinion, women only had two uses: to carry on the family line and to vent his body's needs. In the past, he felt that Madame Chi Bai was different from other women. For example, when it came to the matter of marrying Dong Huangling, the women in the Crown Prince's residence all cried bitterly. They were afraid that the Crown Prince's wife would deal with them after marrying into the residence. Only Madame Chi Bai was able to see the big picture. She even took the initiative to follow him to the eastern capital. Duguxiu had thought that even if Dong Huangling married into the Crown Prince's residence in the future, he would still promote Madame Chi Bai to be the mistress of the residence. However, who would have thought that Madame Chi Bai's handling of the assassination incident this time would be so bad, causing the good impression that Duguxiu had of her to disappear completely. Women were indeed creatures that would become arrogant because of being pampered. How would Duguxiu know that Madame Chi Bai's magnanimity and propriety differed from person to person? Madame Chi Bai was born in the Bashi tribe. Her father had many wives and concubines. Since young, she was influenced by what she saw and heard. Thus, she wasn't against men having many wives. Her mother had also always taught her that only a powerful man could have many wives and children. After Madame Chi Bai got to know Duguxiu, she blindly respected his strength and status. Thus, she wasn't against Duguxiu having other women. However, she was like a female snake that was entrenched in her territory. If she were to meet a powerful woman that could even shake her status, she would disregard everything and eliminate the other party. She took the initiative to come to the eastern capital so that she could gauge the status of the future crown prince's wife, Dong Huangling. If she was certain that Dong Huangling might be a threat to her status, she would have directly killed Dong Huangling. However, after seeing Dong Huangling, Madame Chi Bai was certain that Dong Huangling wouldn't be a threat to her. Most importantly, Duguxiu wasn't interested in Dong Huangling. However, Yunsheng was different. Although Madame Chi Bai didn't even know about Yunsheng's background, with her woman's intuition, she was able to determine that Yunsheng was different from Ling. If Yunsheng also married into the crown prince's residence, who knew how much Duguxiu would dote on her? How could Duguxiu possibly know what Madame Chi Bai was thinking? Duguxiu more or less knew about Madame Chi Bai's background. However, her appearance was charming, and her skills in bed were also very pleasing to him. More importantly, the Empress Dowager and the East Emperor still needed this woman to control them, so he could not kill her for the time being. But even so, it didn't mean that Duguxiu would spoil her like before. Madame Chi Bai was shocked. She also felt that Duguxiu's attitude today was different from before. Disregarding her sickly body, she hurriedly got off the bed and knelt on the ground. "Your Highness, please calm down." The slave did not mean to hide it. Her eyes were filled with tears, and she used her most delicate voice to beg. Her dress was half covered, revealing the beautiful scenery in front of her chest. As long as it was a normal man, seeing such a beautiful woman in tears, he would not be able to help but step forward and hold her in his arms. However, Duguxiu was not a normal man. He looked down at Madame Chi Bai, who was kneeling on the ground, and his long fingers lifted Madame Chi Bai's tender chin. When he retracted his fingers, 2 green marks immediately appeared on Madame Chi Bai's white and slender chin. "Chi Bai, don't think that I won't dare to touch you just because you're a member of the Bashi clan. You should know my true identity. I can kill you at any time." There was not the slightest bit of pity or affection from before in his eagle eyes. Madame Chi Bai was so scared that she trembled, unable to say a word. She could feel the terrifying pressure coming from this man's body. This man was the man who had shared the same bed with her a few days ago. He was too frightening. "However, if you listen to me obediently and help me complete my plan, I will treat you well. No matter if it's in the future Qin Yi or in the 8 Desolate tribe, I can guarantee you a place." Duguxiu's voice slowly became gentle and the strength in his hands also lessened quite a bit. He lifted Madame Chi Bai's chin and left an ice-cold kiss on her lips. The fear in Madame Chi Bai's eyes also slowly turned into obsession. When Duguxiu left the room, Madame Chi Bai felt as if all the strength in her body had been sucked out. She sat on the ground, paralyzed. She bit her lips, not saying a word. What a temperamental and frightening man. She clearly knew that he was such a person, but why did her heart still sink uncontrollably? Madame Chi Bai's face was desolate. At this moment, the piccolo hidden in her clothes vibrated. Madame Chi Bai hurriedly wiped away the tears in her eyes, straightened her clothes and then took out the piccolo. Magical light flickered on the piccolo, and an illusion appeared. The illusion gradually became real, and finally changed into a man of the same size. If Yunxing met the person in the illusion, she would definitely recognize him because this was one of the descendants of the Ba Huang tribe that Yunxing had met once in the Duqian blood realm, Qi Muguan of the Bashi tribe. Third sister, why do you look so pale? Qi Muguan and Madame Qi Bai were actually siblings. Madame Qi Bai and Qi Muguan were born from the same mother. Although the two siblings had to be separated for some reason since young, the relationship between the two siblings had always been good. He saw Madame Qi Bai's weak appearance and was very shocked. He hurriedly asked what had happened. Big brother, one of my soul snake eggs was accidentally devoured. Madame Qi Bai gritted her teeth when she mentioned this matter. It was all that female magician's fault. If she hadn't interfered halfway, Duguxiu wouldn't have become so frightening, and her Dharma soul wouldn't have suffered such a heavy injury. When she mentioned the snake goo earlier, he was only half right. There were two types of snake goo. One was the ordinary snake goo and the other was the soul snake goo. The snake goo only needed to be fed with the host's blood for 10 years, but the soul snake goo was different. It needed to be fed with the host's blood and magic for 20 years to become a soul snake. The snake goo was used for ordinary people, while the soul snake goo was used for powerful magicians or warriors. The soul snake goo could only be fed by the direct descendants of the Bashi tribe. Madame Qi Bai's soul snake had just hatched a few years ago, and it had only laid 3 soul snake eggs. Earlier, in order to control everyone in the imperial palace, Madame Qi Bai used the snake goo to control several people, including the East Emperor and Empress Dowager Situ. However, when it was Dong Huang Linger's turn, because her strength was stronger than her brother and Empress Dowager, ordinary snake goo couldn't control her. In order to please Duguxiu, Madame Qi Bai specially used one of the snake goo to control Dong Huang Linger. Who would have thought that it would actually backfire on her? Chapter 788. How could you be so careless? The soul snake egg is such an important thing, how could you use it so rashly? Qi Muguan's expression changed when he heard this. The soul snake egg was no small matter. It was equivalent to a part of the host's magical soul. Devouring the soul snake meant that Madame Qi Bai's cultivation was greatly reduced. This would definitely cause permanent damage to her future cultivation. I also didn't expect that the other party was a summoner, and an extremely powerful one at that, Madame Qi Bai said hatefully. What annoyed her the most was that she still didn't know who the sorceress who attacked her was. Even though she tried to ask Duguxiu about the sorceress background, Duguxiu was very cautious about the sorceress background and refused to reveal a single word. He even directly warned Madame Qi Bai not to have any ideas about the sorceress. Duguxiu's biased tone made Madame Qi Bai even more jealous. Summoner? A summoner from the Zhao state? Qi Muguan was also very curious. Who could directly devour Madame Qi Bai's soul snake? As a descendant of the 8 wastelands, Madame Qi Bai's cultivation was close to that of a commander-level magical beast the moment she was born. The soul snake that she raised with her blood and magic power was not a match for normal warriors and sorcerers. It shouldn't be. The other party should be a freelance summoner, but her cultivation is very high. I dare say that she's comparable to our tribe's Lord Shaman Zhao, Madame Qi Bai said with certainty. Especially her magical soul is very strong. I suffered because I couldn't withstand her magical soul. It seems that in these years the human race has indeed produced some rising stars that we can't help but pay attention to. I heard from Qingya that he and Violet also met a very powerful female summoner in the Duqian blood realm. She had at least several magical beasts of the commander level and above in her hands. Qi Muguan's words made Qi Bai even more shocked. A summoner who could control several magical beasts of the commander level and above at once, how powerful would that be? This time, Qi Muguan took the initiative to contact Qi Bai partly because he wanted to use Madame Qi Bai to ask around the continent about the mysterious female summoner's background. You have to pay more attention to this matter. The death of the soul snake has affected you greatly. You should go into seclusion for a while. Also, father asked you to get close to the later Qing crown prince Duguxiu. You must find the Qilin king's corpse. How's your investigation on this matter? Qi Muguan gave Madame Qi Bai some spiritual medicine to help her recover her vitality. Hearing her brother's question, Madame Qi Bai hesitated for a moment before shaking her head. I haven't heard anything yet. Big brother, are you sure that King Qilin's corpse is hidden in the later Qin? Not many people knew that the corpse of the Qilin patriarch was not in the Qilin tomb in the Duqian blood seal. There's no smoke without fire. Later Qing crown prince Duguxiu's battle qi is very special. It's very similar to He Linlin's battle qi. Either he stole the corpse of the Qilin patriarch, or he has one of the 8 barren divine weapons, the halberd of the divine warrior. No matter which one he has, you must think of a way to get it. Qi Muguan noticed the slight hesitation on Madame Qi Bai's face. Qi Muguan and Madame Qi Bai's sibling relationship was very deep. He noticed the change in his sister's expression. He couldn't help but ask, "Don't tell me you've fallen in love with that brat?" Qi Bai wouldn't dare. "Big brother, don't worry. I will definitely think of a way to find out." Madame Qi Bai sighed in her heart as she sent Qi Muguan off. A few days later, Yun Sheng and Qi returned to the mainland's magic elite camp. What awaited them was indeed a storm of attacks. However, this time, it was the mainland's warrior elite camp that was pressuring them. It was only then that Yun Sheng found out that the mainland's warrior elite camp had some relationship with later Qin. It was said that the earliest person to establish the mainland's warrior elite camp was a martial emperor of later Qin. The true identity of this later Qin martial emperor was a prince of later Qin. Therefore, all these years the relationship between later Qin and the mainland's warrior elite camp had always been good. Yun Sheng and Qi left the camp without permission and caused a huge commotion in the eastern capital. This matter had already reached the ears of the mainland's warrior elite camp's elders. The Ghost Prison's Great Elder had no choice but to bring the later Qin's envoy to the Great Elder. The Great Elder had no choice but to look for the dark gold-ranked instructor and instructor Shi Huang. The two instructors could only brace themselves and bring along their precious disciples. The later Qin's envoy even embellished a bunch of bad things about Yun Sheng and Qi, saying that it was nothing more than hindering the relationship between the two countries and almost causing a war between later Qin and the eastern capital. However, since things have already come to this, the later Qin's crown prince is also a person who can see the big picture. He has decided not to pursue this matter. When the later Qin's envoy got agitated, he suddenly changed the topic. Duguxiu also had some tricks up his sleeve. He didn't announce the disappearance of Dong Huangling to the public. He didn't tell the public about the princess's disappearance for the time being. He only said that the princess suddenly contracted a serious illness and needed to rest for a year before she could get married. It's really the later Qin's fortune that Prince Dugu can be so righteous. When the Great Elder heard this, he squeezed out a smile on his old face. When Yun Sheng heard this, a trace of ominous premonition arose in her heart. If Duguxiu was so kind, it would really rain red. He did this for nothing more than to save his own face. Although the crown prince won't pursue this matter, the mainland's elite camp still has to give an explanation for this matter. The princess's whereabouts must be revealed. The later Qin's envoy had an arrogant look on his face. This. The Great Elder pondered for a moment, then looked at Yun Sheng. The latter had an ignorant look on her face as if saying, "I don't know, no matter how you ask I won't know." As for Qi, his face was like a coffin. Wanting to get an explanation from him was really more difficult than ascending to the heavens. Cold sweat appeared on the Great Elder's forehead. If it wasn't for the Great Elder's good mental fortitude, he would have already scolded at this moment. He also wanted to vomit blood. Good. They lost goofing out of nowhere. He was a light magician that the mainland's elite camp spent a lot of effort to cultivate. Now that they lost him, they still had to give an explanation to Duguxiu. If it was any other disciple, the Great Elder would probably rush up and beat them up violently. But why did it have to be Yun Sheng and Qi? These two people were already predetermined to be the candidates for the next divine weapon mission. Great Elder, if you are really in a difficult position, the Crown Prince has another way to make it up to you. As if he had already guessed that the Great Elder would be hesitant. The later Qin envoy at the side opened his mouth again. His Highness said that there is another way to resolve this matter. That is, in this mission to find the divine weapon, the mainland's elite camp must form an alliance with the later Qin, act together, advance and retreat together. Chapter 789. Half a month later, after Yi Baiming finished fusing with the blood crystal, he heard the news from the Great Elder. The advantages of forming an alliance with later Qin outweigh the disadvantages. As far as I know, all the major forces have come prepared for this mission. The Great Elder of Ghost Prison was still talking non-stop. He didn't notice that his precious disciple's face had already turned as black as the bottom of a pot. "Little wild cat, how did you provoke Duguxiu in this half a month when Benwang wasn't here?" The Great Elder of Ghost Prison briefly explained the coup in the eastern capital, Dong Huangling running away from the marriage and Gu Feng's retirement. Yi Baiming didn't know that Yun Sheng's trip to the eastern capital would involve the conflict between the eastern capital and later Qin. The tone of the later Qin envoy was very tyrannical. Compared to handing over Donghuang Ling and Gu Feng, forming an alliance was undoubtedly the best way to resolve the dispute. What's more, Prince Dugu magnanimously said that cooperation was cooperation, but in the search for the divine artifact, the elite camp and later Qin were only allies. No matter which side found the divine artifact with their own ability, the other side couldn't obstruct them. This condition, to the elders of the two camps, was undoubtedly very reasonable. The great elder of Ghost Prison had also received the news. Because this mission was related to the search for the divine artifact in the future, the 5 countries of the continent, and even the Hunters Guild, had already formed a strong alliance. Even the major forces that were usually hidden in the continent and rarely showed their faces had already sent out their elites. The news that had been received was that Grand Emperor City and Zhao State had formed an alliance. The Temple and Medicine Emperor Pavilion, the Hunters Guild and Zhou State, Sky Wing City and Everlasting Chamber of Commerce, Tang Yuan, and Immortal Residence should also send people. The 7 major forces have their own strengths. If we join forces with later Qin, the odds of success will be greater. Master has decided to let you and 4 other students represent the continent's elite camp to participate in this divine artifact search. The great elder of Ghost Prison analyzed the pros and cons. As for the Continental Magic Elite Battalion, they would also send out 5 people to join the Continental Magic Elite Battalion in the search for the divine artifact. I'll follow your arrangements. Yi Baiming guessed that Yun Sheng would definitely be selected for the mission to find the divine artifact. Yi Baiming could already predict Du Guxiu's thoughts. Du Guxiu was indeed not a simple-minded martial artist. However, at that time, even if he met Du Guxiu, he would definitely not let him lay a finger on the little wild cat. No one was allowed to touch this little wild cat. Yun Sheng's ears itched, so she rubbed them. The few of you, did you all hear clearly? The elite camp's great elder righteously reprimanded the 5 students in front of him. The Continental Magic Elite Camp's mission to search for the divine artifact had also sent out all the elites. The great elder had racked his brains for a few days before picking out 5 people that he thought were the most suitable candidates. Due to the bet between Lu Tongtian and Blue, Lu Tongtian and Chen Lianer both automatically gave up on this divine artifact mission. In the end, the great elder picked out the 5 students that he thought most highly of. These 5 people were bound to become the mainstay of the Continental Magic Elite Camp in the future. The 5 people were Sanctuary Shakyamuni, Blue, Sky Magician Yun Sheng, Sky Magician Abandon, and 2 other seniors that Yun Sheng had met a few times before. It's a pity. If Lu Tongtian and Feng Tian could also join, the team this time would be even stronger. When the great elder mentioned Feng Tian, his face was still full of regret. Feng Tian had already been missing for more than a month. The Duqin blood seal had also been sealed for a month. In this month, even though the elders of the Continental Magic Elite Camp had spent a lot of effort searching, there was no news of Feng Tian. Feng Tian seemed to have evaporated from the world. As for Lu Tongtian, his performance in the Bloody Sky Beast Metropolis last time had truly disappointed Chief Elder. The other elders all agreed that they had to suppress his arrogance a little. Teacher, please don't worry. This time, Blue will definitely not act on impulse. I will definitely lead the juniors to find the divine weapon. Blue's face was full of determination. Yun Sheng, abandon, both of you are sinners. This time you must help Blue with all your strength. Do not fight again. The great elder nodded in satisfaction. He snorted again and glanced at Yun Sheng and Abandon. These 2 little fellows were young, but their ability to stir up trouble was also top-notch. Especially Yun Sheng. The great elder now had a love-hate relationship with her. In the Duqin Blood Beast world, Yun Sheng's performance was undoubtedly the most eye-catching. She knew when to advance and when to retreat. She could see the big picture and was an excellent leader. She was even more suitable than Blue. However, she was too young and the time she had spent in the Continental Magic Elite Camp was too short. The great elder still hoped that she could gain more recognition in this search for the divine weapon. Luckily, Blue did not dislike Yun Sheng. The 2 of them got along much better than Blue and Lu Tongtian. Yun Sheng and Abandon both responded indifferently. Yun Sheng and Abandon still could not let go of the matter of Gu Feng and Linger. They both thought that if it were not for Du Guxiu, Linger would not have become like an idiot, and Gu Feng would not have left. Yun Sheng had already made up her mind. In this divine weapon quest, she would definitely teach Du Guxiu and Madame Qi by an unforgettable lesson. After the first elder was done lecturing the students, he told them that the location of the divine artifact would be announced in 3 days' time. When the time came, the elders of the two camps would use a magic array to send the students to the location. When Yun Sheng and Abandon walked out of the elder camp, they coincidentally met Lu Tongtian and Qin Lianer. When Qin Lianer saw Yun Sheng, she curled her lips and said, "Yun Sheng, I won't let you be happy for too long." Lu Tongtian gave her a look, indicating for her not to say anything. The two of them then walked away mysteriously. "Yun Sheng, I received a letter from Gu Feng." Seeing that Yun Sheng was still unhappy, Abandon brought Yun Sheng a piece of good news. In the past half a month, Gu Feng brought Ling Er out of Dongdu and went to a small town near Gu Feng's hometown. After taking Yun Sheng's medicine, Ling Er's condition improved a little. She could speak some simple words now. Gu Feng opened a small magic clinic in the town. It sounds like they are doing well. Yun Sheng read Gu Feng's letter. Between the lines, there was a simple sense of happiness. After this mission, let's go and see them. Abandon looked at Yun Sheng gently. "Little wild cat." A voice suddenly interrupted the conversation between Yun Sheng and Abandon. Yun Sheng raised her head and saw Yi Baiming standing not far away. He narrowed his eyes and stared coldly at Abandon. The smile on Abandon's face faded bit by bit. The two men seemed to be at loggerheads as they glared daggers at each other. Yun Sheng couldn't help but shiver. It was still spring, but why did she feel so cold on her neck? Chapter 790. Abandon, you go back first. This mission is no small matter. Go ask Mentor Shi Huang for more poison. Yun Sheng sent Abandon away. Yun Sheng only found out that Yi Baiming was in seclusion to fuse with the blood crystals after she returned to the mainland's elite camp. According to the tone of the ghost prison's great elder, fusing with the blood crystals was an extremely dangerous thing. Since he came out of seclusion, he must have succeeded in fusing with the blood crystals. However, she did not know how many blood crystals he had fused with. Yun Sheng sized up Yi Baiming. Yi Baiming did not seem to have changed much from before. However, if she looked closely, she would find that he was thinner and more muscular than before. His shoulders were narrower and his skin was darker. Even if he did not release his Do Qi, his entire person seemed to emit a deadly deterrent force. Compared to him, Yun Sheng's 1.7 tall magician figure was definitely petite and dainty. This guy was very dangerous. It was better to escape. Yun Sheng shrunk her neck and prepared to escape. Before she could chant, Yi Baiming had already taken a step forward. It seemed that he had already seen through Yun Sheng's intentions. "Little wild cat, I remember that before you left I told you not to provoke Duguxiu. It seems that you did not take my words to heart. How should I punish you?" Yi Baiming took a step forward and forcibly rushed in front of Yun Sheng, pressing down on her magic scepter. Then he scooped her up with his arm and pinned her under a tree. While speaking, Yi Baiming's handsome face inched closer to Yun Sheng, infinitely magnified in her eyes. The two were so close that Yun Sheng could clearly see the fine hairs on Yi Baiming's face. Although Yi Baiming was a warrior, he did not look like an ordinary warrior. His skin was dark brown, but the pores on his face were almost negligible. His gaze was burning as if he wanted to bore two holes in Yun Sheng's face. Yun Sheng swallowed her saliva and ignored her drumming heartbeat. She carefully avoided Yi Baiming's burning gaze and tried her best to retreat. However, there was a hard tree trunk behind her. She had nowhere to retreat, but Yi Baiming was getting closer and closer. In the end, their bodies were pressed together in a very intimate manner. Yun Sheng could even clearly feel the hard muscles under Yi Baiming's warrior robes. "I'm innocent. I didn't provoke Du Guxiu. I only fought him once and I was masked. But somehow he recognized me." Yun Sheng mustered up her courage, puffed out her chest and sucked in her stomach. She wanted to appear more righteous as she tried her best to defend herself. But when she stuck out her chest, she bumped right into Yi Baiming's chest. Yi Baiming grunted, and his gaze became even more intense. Yun Sheng jumped in fright and did not dare to move again. "Oh, if that's the case, then this king can forgive you." Yi Baiming was in a good mood when he saw Yun Sheng like this. He chuckled softly. Little wild cat might not know, but as long as it was a man who had interacted with her, they would remember her aura, her every frown, and her every action as if they were under a spell. Yi Baiming, Abandon, and even Du Guxiu were like this. "Ah, Night Fox, long time no see. I heard that you were successful in your closed-door training. I wonder how many blood crystals you integrated." Seeing that Yi Baiming had no intention of pursuing the matter, Yun Sheng immediately changed the topic. "Guess how many I integrated?" Even though Yun Sheng tried her best to hide it, Yi Baiming caught a trace of worry in her eyes. He saw it and felt warmth in his heart. It had been a long time since someone looked at him with such eyes. Little Wildcat's eyes finally started to look at him. This was a good sign. Ghost Prison's great elder has fused 3 pills. You should have fused at least 2, right? Yun Sheng felt uncomfortable from Yi Baiming's hard muscles. She suspected that with Yi Baiming's muscles, even high-level magic would not be able to hurt him. Even Duguxiu has fused with at least 3 Beast King blood crystals. If I only fused with 2, how am I going to compete with him in this divine artifact mission? Yi Baiming was somewhat dissatisfied. His little wild cat, did she not have enough confidence in him? What, you're saying that Du Guxiu also entered the Duqian blood seal and obtained a Beast King blood crystal? Yun Xing thought to herself. No wonder Du Guxiu's strength broke through so quickly in these few years. The last time they fought, if it wasn't for Tycoon Jean, she would have been captured alive. It shouldn't be wrong. Do you remember when your grandfather Yunba was injured by Du Guxiu? If it was not for the integration of the blood crystals, he would not have such a strong physique. However, at that time he should have only integrated the first blood crystal. Now he should have at least integrated the third. Yi Baiming had not fought with Du Guxiu for many years. The two people's reunion this time was bound to be like fire and water. What they were fighting for was not as simple as the divine weapon. The cooperation between the elite camp and Ho Chin had already become turbulent before it even began because of the conflict between the two. The 3 days of waiting seemed to be especially long. On the night of the second day, not long after Yun Sheng began her celestial meditation, Sister Lan came looking for her. Come with me to the Elder Barracks immediately. The Elder of the Temple will publicly predict the location of the divine weapon in front of the 8 major forces. Yun Sheng picked up her magic scepter and followed Lan to the Elder Barracks. As soon as they entered the Elder Barracks, they saw the 5 people from the elite camp and Elder Ghost Prison were already there. Abandoned and 2 other magic students were also waiting there. The Great Elder was drawing a magic array. Yun Sheng stood with Lan in the magic elite camp's array. The magic array shone brightly, and a hazy image appeared in front of them. Yun Sheng recognized a few people in the image. The elder of the temple, Jiyu, the young of the temple, Xia Wenshu, and the male magician, Ru Yi, whom Yun Sheng had met once in the Zhou State Palace, were all present. On this night, the same magic array appeared in front of the other major forces that were participating in the search for the divine artifact. Everyone, I am Jiyu. I will be hosting the divine weapon prediction ceremony this time. I believe that everyone here has already heard about what happened in the Duqian Blood Beast world last month. The descendants of the 8 barons have reappeared on the mainland. Within 3 years, the Duqian Blood Seal is facing the possibility of collapsing at any time. In order to prevent the collapse of the Duqian Blood Seal, it is imperative to find the lost divine weapon and revive the Duqian Blood Seal. Jiyu's face was solemn. Behind him, Xia Wenshu and the others were also solemn. In half an hour, I will receive a celestial revelation. In order to ensure fairness, I will announce the location of the divine weapon in front of everyone. When the time comes, all the major forces will arrive at the same time to compete for it. Jiyu chanted, and a magic array shaped like a star chart appeared under his feet. Chapter 791. Although the Dharma Temple was famous on the continent, it was still a rare opportunity to see the arbiters of the Dharma Temple like tonight. Yun Sheng and the other mages stared at the magic array without blinking. The magic array beneath Elder Jiyu's feet attracted Yun Sheng's attention. In the eternal starry sky, the stars were scattered like fragments. Elder Jiyu and the other 2 looked as if they were floating in the air under the illumination of the magic array. They looked even more mysterious. Sister Lan, what magic array is that? Yun Sheng had never seen such a magic array before. She couldn't help but ask Lan out of curiosity. The Starry Sky Magic Array. It is a magic array unique to the light mages of the temple. It is said to be able to predict the past and the future. It is the most powerful predictive magic array. Lan looked at the magic array cautiously. Although the temple and the magic elite camp were both known as the holy lands of the continent's mages, the temple was superior in terms of heritage. After all, the temple could be traced back to the era of the 8 Baron tribe. The various magic arrays and unique profound spells left behind by successive law overlords were not something the magic elite camp could compare to. Indigo's gaze seemed to linger on the white figure behind Jiyu. Xia Wenshu, the continent's most famous genius mage. Although Lu Tongtian was the #1 mage in the magic elite camp, in Lan's eyes, Xia Wenshu was the only true genius in the continent's magic world. Only Xia Wenshu could truly be considered as a match for Lan. She just didn't know if Xiao Wenshu would represent the temple in this mission to find the divine artifact. If he did, the competition would be even more intense. Inside the temple, Xiao Wenshu stood behind Jiyu. He was a little unsettled. The 8 major factions were competing for the divine artifact that was about to be unearthed. If there were no accidents, Yun Sheng would also participate in this mission. Although he never left the temple, Xiao Wenshu more or less knew about Yun Sheng. For example, Yun Sheng had joined the magic elite camp. For example, she had risen to power in Skywing City as the Flame Emperor and destroyed the Hidden Night Pavilion. For example, during her first blood purge, she had saved several students who had been kidnapped by the descendants of the 8 Desolates. For example, she and an unknown magician ruined the marriage of the later Qing Crown Prince Duguxiu. Xiao Wenshu memorized every bit of this information in his heart. She should have seen him in the magic array by now. Xiao Wenshu was a little nervous. For the past few years he had not left the temple at all because he wanted to calm himself down. He had thought that he had gradually let go of everything, but when he found out that Yun Sheng had appeared in the magic elite camp of the mainland, he could not remain calm anymore. In the end, his heart was still a mess. Senior brother, Master has already started chanting. Do you think that the Starry Sky magic array can find the location of the divine weapon? His junior brother's voice interrupted Xiao Wenshu's thoughts. Don't forget the essence of Starry Sky magic. As long as you're in a place illuminated by starlight, you won't be able to escape the illumination of the Starry Sky magic array. However, using the Starry Sky magic array once will cost Master 10 years of cultivation. Master will not use it unless he has no other choice. Xiao Wenshu sighed. This time, the crisis of the Dutian blood seal had come so suddenly that even the Destiny Mirror had not discovered it. Elder Judge Jiyu was worried about the future of the entire continent, so he had no choice but to use the Starry Sky magic array to find the hiding place of the divine weapon. The Starry Sky magic array could only be activated by light magicians. Because it covered a large area, even Jiyu found it difficult to set it up. Thanks to Xiao Wenshu's breakthrough half a month ago, Elder Judge Jiyu had the confidence to set up the array to deduce the location of the divine weapon. Under his feet, the Starry Sky magic array shone brightly. As Elder Judge Jiyu chanted, his magic scepter shot out a ray of light that was as bright as the sun. Every time the light shone brighter, Elder Judge Jiyu's forehead would break out in sweat. It could be seen that even the powerful Elder Judge Jiyu had a hard time using this Starry Sky magic array. The ray of light merged into the Starry Sky magic array. In the vast starry sky there were countless stars. The ray of light was like a shooting star that had eyes, rushing towards a certain direction. Finally, the magic array stopped at a spot, shining with dazzling starlight. Elder Judge Jiyu looked as if he had fought a hard battle. He put down the scepter in his hand and said tiredly, "Wenshu, I'll leave the rest to you. I've done my best." Rui stepped forward and helped Elder Judge Jiyu. In just a quarter of an hour, Elder Judge Jiyu looked 10 years older than before. A few wrinkles appeared on his youthful face. Could be seen that this Starry Sky magic array consumed a lot of magic power. "Yes, Master." Xiao Wenshu stepped forward. Everyone's gazes were involuntarily attracted by Xiao Wenshu. Xiao Wenshu, known as one of the Wuji 5 Annulus, was just like his name. In front of the dark Starry Sky magic array, he was like a rising moon, unknowingly attracting everyone's attention. His white robe fluttered, his expression gentle. As Xiao Wenshu chanted, everyone's eyes were focused on his magic scepter. Hiss, even the great elder could not help but narrow his eyes. Lan's face was a lot more unpleasant. "It's actually 7 magic soul stones?" Yun Sheng could not help but open her mouth slightly. Yun Sheng still remembered the first time she met Xiao Wenshu 8 or 9 years ago. At that time, Xiao Wenshu was a sky magician. He was also the youngest sky magician on the continent. Xiao Wenshu did not move around much in the past few years. She did not expect him to break through from a sky magician to a law overlord in just a few years. A law overlord was second only to a law god. To break through 2 important levels in a few years, Xiao Wenshu was indeed a genius among geniuses. Compared to him, Feng Tian, Lu Tongtian, they were all trash. Yun Sheng was filled with emotions, but she neglected one point. Xiao Wenshu was a genius. In those 8 or 9 years, he rose from a magic apprentice like a rocket to a sky magician. He was also a genius among geniuses. Although they had witnessed Xiao Wenshu's cultivation, many people's expressions changed, especially those from the Medicine Emperor Pavilion. They were secretly happy because they had formed an alliance with the Dharma Temple. With an expert like Xiao Wenshu, their chances of winning would undoubtedly be much higher. Xia Wenshu chanted, and another ray of light shot out from his magic scepter, merging with the ray of light that Elder Si Ming had released earlier. The moment the two rays of light merged together, the starlight extended countless times, extending downwards. Chapter 792. Even though the magic array was illusory, young Master Si Ming's magic power had passed through the magic array and was transmitted to an unknown place on the continent. At this moment, somewhere on the continent, whether it was day or night, a powerful magic array was hanging in the sky. The magic array would reflect the location of the 8 barren divine artifacts. Somewhere on the boundless continent, young Master Si Ming and Xia Wenshu used their powerful magic power to form a magic array that was emitting light. The starry sky magic array slowly changed. From Yun Sheng's point of view, the current situation was very similar to a modern-day documentary film. The starry sky magic array was like a helicopter cruising in the sky. The magic array clearly reflected the area where the divine artifacts were hidden. The first thing that appeared in front of everyone was an endless mountain range. The mountain range was very high above sea level and was continuous. This mountain range was estimated to be 2,000 to 3,000 meters above sea level and was close to a vast blue ocean. The mountain range was rugged and there were many trees. Looking up from the slope, there was only one path into the mountain range. It was a path of life, located between the mountain and the ocean. It was so narrow that only a horse could pass through it and no one knew where it led to. What was eye-catching was that one side of the path was a steep mountain wall, but the other side of the path was a bottomless abyss that was close to the ocean. The raging waves in the ocean were raging and occasionally slammed against the mountain wall. "Look, there seems to be a building on the mountain?" Someone from the elite warrior camp exclaimed softly. No one expected that on this mountain range, which was known as a desolate place, there would suddenly be a large building. Looking from afar, the buildings were scattered at the highest point of the mountain range and it looked like a city. The magic array's light shone brighter, and the city at the peak of the mountain gradually appeared in front of everyone. The city was remote and uninhabited, and there were broken walls everywhere. It looked like it had been many years since anyone had lived there. The younger generation present did not know where this place was. "That's the ruins of Taiyuan. I didn't expect the divine artifacts to be hidden there." Almost at a glance, the few elders present recognized the ruins. The first elder's face also became a little more serious, but at the same time, there was also a little bit of joy. Xia Wenshu also stared at the illusory ruins inside the magic array. From the first elder's narration, Yun Sheng and the others roughly knew the origin of the Taiyuan relics in Dongdu. Taiyuan Ancient Ruins is a very mysterious place on the mainland. It is located in the Taiyuan mountain range. Taiyuan Mountain was originally a nameless mountain. It was located at the border between the mountains and the sea. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth was abundant. However, due to the steep terrain and the presence of magical beasts, there were very few people in the nameless mountain range for a period of time. This situation did not improve until the appearance of the famous Penglai people called Taiyuan. Taiyuan was a talented member of the royal family of Penglai. It was said that he used to be the prince of Penglai, but because of the emergence of the Zhao state, he took over the royal power of Penglai. Taiyuan could only leave Penglai in anger. In order to avoid the Zhao state and to re-establish his own political power, he took his family and had been looking for a suitable place to live on the mainland. He finally came to the nameless mountain area. He found that the mountain was full of natural dangers. It was easy to defend and not easy to attack. It was also close to the sea so it could develop shipping and ports. As a result, Taiyuan led his family to rename Nameless Mountain as Taiyuan Mountain and built an otherworldly land that resembled a small city-state. Even the Grand Emperor City and Channy City that appeared in the future were built in the form of Taiyuan City at that time. However, not long after Taiyuan built the Taiyuan town, the town attracted several heavenly thunders in one day. The whole Taiyuan City was turned into ruins by the heavenly thunders. Some people said that Taiyuan City was destroyed because Taiyuan accidentally attracted the heavenly thunders when he broke through the Taiyuan City. Ever since Taiyuan City fell, many people explored the Taiyuan mountain area. This was because there were rumors on the mainland that as the Prince of Penglai, Taiyuan carried a lot of treasures with him. Some people even said that Taiyuan had accumulated considerable wealth in Taiyuan City. Taiyuan City fell overnight, but countless treasures were still left in Taiyuan City. At that time, about 300 to 400 warriors, magicians, and summoners who went to comprehend the ruins never came out after entering. Some people said that it was because there were terrifying magical beasts left behind from the ancient times in the ruins. Some people also said that there was a magic array left behind from the ancient times in the Taiyuan ruins. Many experts left the boundless land after entering this magic array. However, these were just legends. Those who entered the Taiyuan ruins never came out again. This ruin was a forbidden area on the mainland. It was said that there were many magical beasts from the Eight Desolates era left in this forbidden area. Not only that, the most special thing about this forbidden area was that it was a restriction. However, because Taiyuan was a law overlord at that time, he attracted the heavenly thunders, so there was a saying on the mainland that experts above the law overlord level were not allowed to enter the Taiyuan ruins. Otherwise they might attract the second heavenly thunders. Anyone whose cultivation was above the Saint Realm or the Martial Emperor level was not allowed to enter. If they tried to force their way in, they would trigger the ancient Five Thunders restriction and be killed. Even law overlords did not dare to enter the forbidden area of the ancient era. There were people who had suspected this before, but no one in the ancient era thought that the divine artifact would be hidden in the ruins of Taiyuan. The restriction of the restriction meant that Xia Wenshu, who was the most powerful person in the temple, would not be able to enter the restriction. This made the other factions secretly happy, but the Medicine Emperor Pavilion was furious. The location where the divine artifact was unearthed has been announced. I asked the factions to hurry to the ruins of Taiyuan within 3 days. Xia Wenshu's voice was calm. The magic ripples disappeared and the star magic array disappeared. Outside, the sky was already bright. Although they had not slept for a night, no one felt sleepy. The appearance of the ruins of Taiyuan had brought them clues about the divine artifact, but at the same time, it had brought them a new danger. Everyone in the elders' barracks was silent. I didn't think that the divine artifact would be hidden in the ruins of Taiyuan. The first elder also did not think that it would be such a dangerous place. If it was before, the first elder would have been determined to obtain the divine artifact, but now, he was already thinking of retreating. After all, the 10 students chosen by the mainland's elite camp were all the strongest. If anything happened to them, the future of the mainland would be greatly affected. Moreover, the 8 desolate tribes were eyeing the mainland covetously, and it was very likely that they would return to the mainland. Under such circumstances, if anything happened to the students, the first elder would definitely regret it. Chapter 793. After a moment of hesitation, the great elder decided to give the 10 students the choice. These students had undergone blood refinement, and most of them had also undergone the test of the Dutian bloodprint. They had the ability to make their own choices. The Taiyuan ruins, how did the Taiyuan prince die, and whether the ruins were as rumored, hiding a powerful ancient beast. These were all unknowns. The starry sky magic array in the temple only indicated that there was a relic hidden in the Taiyuan ruins. However, the Taiyuan ruins were huge, and the relic could be hidden anywhere in Taiyuan Mountain. Therefore, this mission to find the relic was very difficult. Before we depart, you still have a chance to back out. Let me remind you that because of the restrictions in the Taiyuan ruins, Elder Guiyu and I cannot enter. In the past few hundred years, no one who entered the Taiyuan ruins survived. The ruins are also known as the most dangerous place in Wuji. The great elder looked at the 10 people present. Master, I am willing to go. Lan did not hesitate. As the great elder's direct disciple, she shouldered the responsibility of the entire mainland's magic elite camp. If any other power obtained the relic, it would be a threat to the mainland's elite camp. Abandon and I are also willing to go with Sister Lan. Yun Sheng was also determined to obtain the relic. In the huge Taiyuan mountain, it may be difficult for others to find the relic, but Yun Sheng was different. She had the relic on her. As long as one was near the relic on one's body would automatically alert them. Compared to the others, Yun Sheng had the advantage. The mainland's warrior elite camp also swears to advance and retreat with the magic elite camp. Yi Baiming replied in a deep voice. We also swear to live and die with the glory of the elite camp. The rest of the warriors and magicians said in unison, without any intention of backing down. On the same day, the 2 camps headed to the Taiyuan ruins, which was located in the far north of the mainland. This time, the one who escorted the elites to the Taiyuan ruins was still Elder Helian. The empty ship was still the same empty ship, but Elder Helian's expression was much more serious. It was no wonder that Elder Helian would do such a thing. After all, the Taiyuan ruins were notorious. Elder Helian sending 10 students there felt like a heroic warrior cutting off his wrist. Up ahead is the Taiyuan mountains. We will land in a fishing village by the Abyssal Sea. You will have to rely on yourselves for the rest of the journey. The airship slowly flew by the Abyssal Sea. White seagulls flew across the blue sea. In this season there was no wind or waves on the beach. It was a beautiful seaside landscape. But at this time, no one was in the mood to enjoy this beautiful scenery. In the fishing village, the village chief was receiving dozens of distinguished guests in a panic. Although Taiyuan Mountain doesn't belong to any country, the fishing village here is under the jurisdiction of Penglai. However, because it was located next to a dangerous place, even the tax officials of Penglai were too lazy to come here. Therefore, the fishing village could be said to be a place where no one cared about anything. The fishermen in the fishing village relied on the sea for food. They farmed some shellfish and kelp for a living. In the past, there weren't many people from outside the village in a year. But in the past 2 days there were many distinguished people coming. The village chief was so scared that he didn't dare to go out. He thought that something had happened in the fishing village. As soon as they entered the village, they saw a few tents with pointed roofs. Outside the tents, there were several military flags that symbolized later Qin. Even during the day there were guards patrolling everywhere in the military camp. The later Qin cavalry, wearing black helmets and black armor, walked in the same pace. Their eyes were like torches. Later Qin Crown Prince Duguxiu and Madame Qi Bai were sitting in the main tent at this time. Later Qin and Penglai were relatively close to each other. Duguxiu had already arrived yesterday afternoon. At this time, Duguxiu was still wearing a golden warrior robe with dark patterns. His calloused hands were holding a piece of soft cloth and wiping a dark heavy sword. His red hair spread out, adding a bit of wildness. Madame Qi Bai was wearing tight clothing that showed off her curves. Her body leaned against Duguxiu's side, looking like a little bird. Reporting to the Crown Prince, the elite camp of the continent has arrived, a guard reported outside the tent. Suddenly, Duguxiu stood up, and a trace of emotion appeared in his calm eyes. He quickly walked out of the tent, looking very impatient. Madame Qi Bai was unwilling to follow. The two walked out of the tent. In the direction of the shore, there was indeed an empty boat that was descending. They had finally arrived. Duguxiu's eyes were rippling with extraordinary splendor. People walked down from the empty boat one after another. Yunxing walked in third. She was wearing blue today. Her black hair shone like black silk under the dazzling sunlight. The moment Duguxiu saw Yunxing, there was only shock in his eyes. Then that shock was quickly ignited and turned into a prairie fire, turning into a desire that he had never felt before. Not far away, Yunxing was standing there. Ever since he met Yunxing again in the eastern capital, although he did not see her appearance clearly, Duguxiu's heart was like a cat's claw that would scratch it from time to time. Duguxiu had once guessed what Yunxing would look like now. Enchanting or full of spirit. He had fantasized countless times. But no matter how many fantasies he had, it could not compare to a living person. After not seeing her for so many years, Yunxing had become even more moving. Duguxiu's eyes were fixed on her body, not even willing to move. But right at this moment, a hand appeared from under Duguxiu's eyes and landed on Yunxing's shoulder, ruining the mood. There was a hint of dominance in his laziness. Just like that, Yi Baiming's face blocked Duguxiu's line of sight. Yi Baiming, why was he here? Duguxiu was also careless. He had planned to form an alliance with the mainland's elite camp with the intention of getting close to Yunxing, who knew that it would be a buy one get one free deal. He had completely forgotten that Yi Baiming was also in the mainland's elite warrior camp. It was really like meeting a love rival, especially with red eyes. Back in Zhou State's Yujing City, Yi Baiming's warning was still vivid in his mind. However, as the Prince of Zhou State, Yi Baiming did not represent Zhou State in this divine weapon mission. This really surprised Duguxiu. It seemed that the rumors outside were true. Yi Baiming and Zhou State's emperor did not get along well. Lord Baiming, long time no see. Duguxiu narrowed his eyes. Prince Dugu, long time no see. But before we greet each other, can I trouble you to move your eyes and love away from this prince's woman? This woman is and will be mine. As he spoke, Yi Baiming reached out with his long arm and threw a look at Duguxiu, pulling Yunxing into his embrace. He did not hesitate to declare his ownership of her. The smile on Duguxiu's face disappeared completely. Chapter 794. What Yi Baiming meant was that he was telling Duguxiu that Yunxing was his fiancée. As early as a few years ago, Duguxiu had already been struck out and lost his chance. The two of them hadn't even started the mission yet, but they were already at each other's throats. This wasn't a good sign. Duguxiu's expression could be described as changing faces in a Beijing opera, making Yunxing blush with shame. Although she planned to take revenge on Duguxiu, she still had to maintain peace on the surface. Besides, that damned Yi Baiming. What did he mean by the past, present, and future were all his? Yunxing could imagine the expressions of the people on the empty ship behind her. She reached out her hand and pinched Yi Baiming's waist. The corners of the latter's mouth twitched, but the smile on his face was still incomparably evil. Duguxiu clearly saw the small movements of the two. Even a blind person could see that the relationship between Yunxing and Yi Baiming was unusual. If it was before, Duguxiu thought that Yunxing was pretending to be engaged to Yi Baiming in order to avoid him. But now it seemed that there was indeed an ambiguous relationship between the two. I haven't seen the Northern Underworld King for a long time. Seeing that the Northern Underworld King's strength has advanced by leaps and bounds, why don't we have a competition before we start looking for the divine artifact? Duguxiu held the heavy sword in his hand and glared fiercely at Yi Baiming with his eagle eyes. That's fine. This prince also has the same intention. Yi Baiming sneered. Prince Dugu, I wonder if the people from the other major forces have already arrived. Elder Hellion didn't know what grudges there were between the two men, but he also smelled a strong smell of gunpowder. He hurriedly inserted himself between the two, forcibly interrupting the match that was about to start. The people from Penglai and Grand Emperor City have already arrived. The people from the Dharma Temple and the Medicine Emperor Pavilion are also in the village. Tang Yuan and Li Xiao will arrive this afternoon. The people from the Immortal Residence and Tianyi City's Everlasting Chamber of Commerce have yet to arrive. As for Zhou State, I thought Dark North King would know better than me. Duguxiu couldn't flare up in front of Elder Hellion. True swords and spears could not be compared, but Duguxiu's words were full of sarcasm. Yi Baiming was a prince of Great Zhou, but he did not care about his motherland and represented the elite camp to participate in this mission. As he spoke, several people dressed in Zhou State's uniform walked over. When they saw Yi Baiming, two of them were pleasantly surprised to see Yi Baiming. Yi Baiming, good boy. It really is you. The one who spoke was a scholarly man. He had red lips and white teeth, and he held a folding fan in his hand. He was one of Yi Baiming's childhood friends, Qing Bai. Behind Qing Bai stood a few people, and one of them also nodded towards Yi Baiming. It was Bu Jiuxiao from Wu Profound Limitless School. As for the others, judging from their clothing, they were actually two magicians. However, the two of them were very mysterious. They wore masks on their faces, so it was impossible to see their specific appearances. After Yi Baiming joined the elite camp, he hadn't returned to Zhou State. He hadn't seen his two good friends for 5 or 6 years. When the three men who had been good friends since childhood met, even Yi Baiming, who had always been cold, could not help but smile. Boy, you really don't have a conscience. After you went to the elite camp, you didn't even send a letter. Qing Bai and Bu Jiuxiao walked forward. The three men gave each other a solid bear hug. There was a kind of friendship that could withstand the test of time and hardships. Yi Baiming, Qing Bai, and Bu Jiuxiao were like this. Hey, you're already a martial emperor. Look at this boy, his body is very strong. Qing Bai didn't hold back as he touched Yi Baiming up and down. Bu Jiuxiao also couldn't help but nod. The two of you are not bad either. You've already broken through to the martial sage realm. Yi Baiming also had a look of emotion. Hey, I heard that Yunxing also went to the elite camp. Qing Bai searched the crowd before his gaze finally landed on Yunxing, who was standing behind Yi Baiming. Wow, amazing. That fierce tigress from back then has actually become a great beauty. Qing Bai's eyes also lit up when he saw Yunxing. Back then Yi Baiming had a soft spot for Yunxing, and Qing Bai had complained about it many times. However, after not seeing each other for a few years, he realized that a girl had changed 18 times between childhood and womanhood. Now Yunxing's temperament and appearance were both first class. Standing beside Yi Baiming, they could be said to be a match made in heaven. Senior brother Qing, you're still as talkative as before. Yunxing smiled. She was also used to Qing Bai's personality. Seeing that everyone was surrounding Yunxing, a trace of jealousy flashed across the eyes of the shorter of the two magicians who came with Qing Bai. However, he didn't show it on his face. Yi Baiming also noticed that there were a few unfamiliar faces in Zhou State's camp, especially two of the magicians. They seemed to be very strong. They were at least at the sky rank. The taller one seemed to be even stronger than the sky rank. What are the origins of those two? They were recommended by the Royal Magic Academy. You also know that Wushuan Wuji School is made up of warriors. It was said that the artifact mission this time would involve some kind of ancient restriction. To be safe, they had specially found a few mages. I'm not sure about their origins, but they're not weak. Qingbai glanced at the two of them. It was obvious that Qingbai didn't like the two of them. It was no wonder. Wuxia Wuji School had been preparing for the divine artifact mission for many years. Earlier, Qitian deputy director thought that the divine artifact would be unearthed in a short period of time, so he dug out Yun Sheng and the others, who knew that the time for the divine artifact to be unearthed would be delayed again and again. This time they finally found the location of the divine artifact in the temple. The positions of the two magicians of unknown origins were originally occupied by Qingbai's other two junior brothers and sisters. As soon as the two of them appeared, they directly replaced them. For this reason, there were still some complaints within Wuxia Wuji School. Other than Qingbai and the others as the Zhou State Alliance's Hunters Guild, they also sent a few experienced hunters. The strength of these people were all around the Martial Saint realm. After a while, someone came to report that the people from the Immortal Residence had also arrived. When he heard that the people from the Immortal Residence had arrived, Yi Baiming couldn't help but pay more attention. This guy was also a haggard person. Earlier, Yun Sheng had said that her sweetheart was the Immortal Residence's Divine Wind King. Yi Baiming had always remembered this matter. However, what surprised Yun Sheng was that the person from the Immortal Residence this time wasn't the Divine Wind King, but the Fire Elf tribe's Huoyu tribe's leader. When Huoyu appeared with a group of outstanding and powerful elf warriors, he immediately attracted everyone's attention. Huoyu didn't care about the others. The elves were originally a proud race. In their eyes, the human race was despicable. This time, in the search for the divine artifact, he didn't want to have too much interaction with the human race. Look, it's a new week. Are there any new monthly votes? Especially when you just entered the pit, remember to take a look. Chapter 795. Huoyu was handsome, and his aura was not inferior to Li Xiao and the others. His appearance attracted the attention of many female magicians and martial artists. However, Huoyu did not even look at them. As the chief of the Fire Elves, Huoyu was the second most powerful expert in the Immortal Keeper Nation, second only to the Divine Wind. In the human race, his strength was roughly at the level of a saint-level Dharma King. Although the Immortal Keeper Nation was an otherworldly place, and the elves did not participate in the affairs of the human race, this divine artifact search mission was related to the entire continent. After the Immortal Keeper Nation received the news, they decided to participate. Originally, the Divine Wind King wanted to come personally, but the Taiyuan ruins were notorious, and the Elven Queen stopped him from coming personally. After weighing the pros and cons, the Divine Wind King could only give this mission to his good brother Huoyu. Huoyu and the elves' arrogant faces made the other major factions very unhappy. It was only when Huoyu saw Yun Sheng that the cold arrogance on his handsome face relaxed. Huoyu respectfully walked in front of Yun Sheng and bowed. Respected Lady Yun Sheng, I represent the Fire Elves tribe to extend my most sincere greetings to you. He knelt on one knee and touched Yun Sheng's hand with his forehead. This was the highest form of etiquette in the elves, and it was only used when meeting the most respected king. Huoyu actually did this to an ordinary human. This showed that Yun Sheng's identity was not ordinary. Yun Sheng had the inheritance of the Fire Elves tribe's queen, and Huoyu had long regarded her as the true chief of the Fire Elves tribe. However, because Yun Sheng insisted on not inheriting the inheritance, he could only give up. However, in Huoyu's opinion, Yun Sheng's status was very noble. To a certain extent, it was comparable to the Divine Wind King and the Elven Queen. This was especially true for some of the forces that were not clear about Yun Sheng's background. They began to discuss softly when they saw this. Huoyu, long time no see. Yun Sheng had stayed in the Immortal Keeper Nation before, so she was very calm about Huoyu's words and actions. She was just a little surprised that the Divine Wind King did not appear for such an important mission. Divine Wind King, as you have just ascended the throne, it is inconvenient for you to leave. He asked me to tell Lady Yun Sheng that he is fine. Huoyu sighed inwardly. Why did Divine Wind, that silly boy, need to find an excuse? After Yun Sheng left, he looked fine on the surface, but his heart was empty. The Divine Wind King ordered the female officer of the King Tree to not touch anything in Yun Sheng's room. Yun Sheng's residence was exactly the same as when she left. The Holy Wind King used a large amount of government affairs to numb himself. Only during the full moon of every month, he would send away the people around him and sit alone in Yun Sheng's room for an entire night. How could someone like him be safe and sound? This time, the Holy Wind King had promised the queen that he would not come. Part of the reason was that he was afraid that if he saw Yun Sheng, he would not be able to resist bringing her back to the immortal residence. If they could not be together, there was no need to meet. Huoyu stood up and noticed that behind Yun Sheng, there were Yi Baiming, Duguxiu, Qi and the others, who also had outstanding looks and temperaments. He could not help but take a few more glances. These few men each had their own merits, and their strength was the absolute powerhouse of the human race. Among them, Duguxiu was the crown prince of the later Qin. He was incomparably fierce and was the crown prince of the region. Qi's magic power was very special. Although he was a commoner at first glance, people would feel that he was very unusual. As for the man standing closest to Yun Sheng, Huoyu only took a glance and his pupils unconsciously shrank. Huoyu actually couldn't see through this man at a glance. Huoyu also keenly sensed that Yun Sheng was somewhat different from a few years ago. Not only in terms of appearance and height, Yun Sheng's magic power had also soared greatly compared to when she was in the immortal residence. Back then, when she was in the immortal residence, Yun Sheng was called trash and she did not even know magic. But now, she was a sky magician, worthy of being the successor of the Fire Spirit Queen. Compared to when she was in the immortal residence, her temperament was different. The current Yun Sheng was stronger and more attractive. No wonder the Holy Wind King was dead set on her. Seeing the flower protector beside Yun Sheng, Huoyu could not help but mourn for his good friend in his heart. Yun Sheng, however, recalled how the Holy Wind King took care of her in every possible way when she was in the immortal residence. She could not help but sigh. Just as Huoyu stood up, there was a roar in the sky and a ship marked Wuji. The empty airship of Heaven's Wings slowly descended under its own control. Seeing this, a smile appeared on Yun Sheng's face. Ever since Donghuang Ling'er's incident, Yun Sheng no longer had a smile on her face. Heaven's Wings Jade had come. Yun Sheng's guess was right. This time, the representative of Heaven's Wings City and Wuji Chamber of Commerce was Heaven's Wings Jade, as well as a group of contestants from Heaven's Wings City. Third sister. Heaven's Wings Jade flew towards Yun Sheng as soon as she got off the ship. She no longer had the image of the city lord of Heaven's Wings City. However, the only one who could make the Heavenly Winged Jade reveal such an expression was Yun Sheng. Heaven's Wings Jade and Yun Sheng had only been separated for a few months, but after learning about her second sister, Yun Sheng, she had been very worried about Yun Sheng. Big sister. Yun Sheng smiled like a flower. Then she looked at Zhou Qingchuan, who was walking down from the ship with Heaven's Wings Jade, and winked at Heaven's Wings Jade. Heaven's Wings Jade understood and could not help but spit. Damn girl, it's not what you think. Qingchuan and I are just partners. This is just a partnership and you're already calling each other by their names. Big brother and big sister, they just happen to be a pair. Yun Sheng teased. Hearing that, Heaven's Wings Jade blushed and wanted to hit Yun Sheng. Big sister, please spare me. I don't dare to say any more. Yun Sheng repeatedly begged for mercy. Only then did Heaven's Wings Jade give up. What a pity. If second sister was here, the three of us would be able to fight side by side again. Heaven's Wings Jade sighed. After Donghuang Ling'er got into trouble, Heaven's Wings Jade even sent over a lot of spiritual medicine. Don't worry, Ling'er. She'll be back sooner or later. Yun Sheng and Heaven's Wings Jade chatted at the side, and the bystanders could not get a word in at all. Zhou Qingchuan, who got off the ship one step later, could only helplessly stand at the side and watch the two play around with a smile. Yun Sheng had long intended to make Zhou Qingchuan and Heaven's Wings Jade marry each other. Both of them were young talents, a perfect match. Due to the reconstruction of Heaven's Wings City, after spending a few months together as expected, there were some sparks. This time they came together and their relationship was much closer than before. Yun Sheng suspected that it would not be long before she could attend their wedding banquet. When Zhou Qingchuan saw Yun Sheng, he also felt a little embarrassed. When Zhou Qingchuan first met Yun Sheng, he had a good impression of her. He admitted that he still felt a little uncomfortable when he saw Yun Sheng. However, when he found out that Yun Sheng was already engaged to someone, and that this person was the Zhou State's Lord Baiming, Zhou Qingchuan already knew that it was impossible for him and Yun Sheng to be together. In the eyes of the outside world, the Zhou State's Lord Baiming was perhaps just an unfavored dethroned crown prince. However, due to certain reasons, Zhou Qingchuan had interacted with Yi Baiming before. The relationship between the two of them was far beyond what the outside world thought. Part of the reason why Zhou Qingchuan came to participate in the Divine Artifact Search mission this time was to see Yun Sheng. The other reason was for Yi Baiming. Chapter 796. Strictly speaking, Zhou Qingchuan knew Yi Baiming a few years earlier than he knew Yun Sheng. At that time, Yun Sheng was just an abandoned girl who had just arrived at the Jade Capital. Zhou Qingchuan was the young master of the continent's #1 Chamber of Commerce, Everlasting Chamber of Commerce. He had followed his grandfather, Chairman Zhou, to learn all kinds of Chamber of Commerce's affairs. At that time, Yi Baiming was just a low-key dethroned crown prince. However, Yi Baiming had already begun to secretly cultivate his own power. After Empress Li's death, she left some properties and old subordinates to Yi Baiming. After Yi Baiming returned to the Jade Capital, he reorganized his subordinates and bought the Wanlong gambling house. Within a few years, the Wanlong gambling house had rapidly amassed wealth in the Jade Capital and became a local snake. At that time, Yi Baiming, who was hiding behind the Wanlong gambling house, had already made some transactions with Everlasting Chamber of Commerce through Longhua. These transactions involved weapons, herbs, and soul stones. The magical beasts from the Wanlong gambling house's stone gambling convention were also purchased through Everlasting Chamber of Commerce. After a few years of cooperation, the purple gold mine incident occurred at the borders of Zhou State, later Qin and Tangyuan. Everlasting Chamber of Commerce received news that a batch of semi-finished refined capital ore from Tangyuan's second prince had disappeared without a trace. This news was tightly sealed at that time. However, as the overlord of commerce, Everlasting Chamber of Commerce still managed to obtain some gossip. At that time, the rumor was that later Qin's Duguxiu had swallowed that batch of purple gold mine. Some people even said that Grand Emperor had dug a secret passage and stolen the capital ore. There were also rumors that the old and cunning Emperor of Zhou State had reaped the benefits. However, just as the capital ore incident was gradually forgotten by people, one night, Chairman Zhou suddenly called Zhou Qingchuan over to discuss a transaction with a mysterious guest. That was the first time Zhou Qingchuan saw Yi Baiming. Accompanied by Longhua, that young man who was so handsome that he didn't seem like a mortal had a candlelight talk with Chairman Zhou for the entire night. That night, Yi Baiming revealed a side of himself that the world did not know. Whether it was the situation of the continent or the advantages and disadvantages of the Everlasting Chamber of Commerce, he was able to analyze everything. In the end, he used a batch of refined purple gold ore to convince President Zhou to purchase half of the Everlasting Chamber of Commerce's business. After Yi Baiming left, Zhou Qingchuan questioned why he sold the Everlasting Chamber of Commerce's businesses to others. However, Chairman Zhou sighed with emotion. Each new generation excels the previous one. Zhou State's Lord Baiming is destined to stand at the pinnacle of the continent. It's really scary to be enemies with such a person. It's better to form an alliance with him as soon as possible so that the descendants of the Zhou family can enjoy wealth forever. After President Zhou passed away, the partnership between the Everlasting Chamber of Commerce and Yi Baiming became even more secretive. In the entire continent, only Yi Baiming and Zhou Qingchuan knew about it. The two of them also appreciated each other after many collaborations in the future and became close friends. After that, Zhou Qingchuan met Yun Sheng by chance. He was attracted by Yun Sheng's special temperament and could not extricate himself. Later, when Zhou Qingchuan heard that Yun Sheng and the Zhou State's Lord Baiming were engaged, he realized that he and Yi Baiming had fallen in love with the same person. Yun Sheng and Yi Baiming were not ordinary people. Just from this point alone, Yun Sheng and the Lord Baiming were a good match. After a painful struggle in his heart, Zhou Qingchuan chose to give up. A gentleman had the beauty to fulfill someone's wish. A person like Yi Baiming would not be easily moved. Once he was moved, he would never leave regardless of where he went. Zhou Qingchuan was relieved to hand Yun Sheng over to Yi Baiming. After thinking this through, Zhou Qingchuan felt relieved. Not long after the people from Skywing City and the Everlasting Chamber of Commerce arrived, the people from Grand Emperor City also arrived. This time, the team sent by Grand Emperor City did not have Yuan Wuji or Xian Mimi. Instead, it was a group of young men and women who looked like cannon fodder. They were led by the Grand Elder of Grand Emperor City. Yuan Wuji did not come because he was still in seclusion. As for Xian Mimi, she originally wanted to participate in the mission to find the divine artifact. However, after the starry sky magic array in the temple predicted the exact location of the divine artifact, she decided to back out. Xian Mimi did not dare to go to the Taiyuan ruins, a dangerous place where one could not return from. The Grand Elder also recognized Yun Sheng. He nodded at Yun Sheng and was surprised to find that Yun Sheng was already a sky magician. Now that Grand Emperor City had few talents, the Yun family of Zhou State was on the rise. Fortunately, Yuan Shahua was married to Yun Songlong. The Grand Elder sighed. As for the people from Zhou State, they were also unfamiliar summoners. Yunxing did not recognize any of them. Just as everyone was gathering, a very discordant voice cut in. Prince Dugu, Lord Baiming, long time no see. Tang Yuan's second prince, Li Xiao, walked over with a group of magicians. Unlike the other major forces who had formed an alliance, Tang Yuan had formed an army alone this time. Second Prince Li Xiao still had a modest and gentle look on his face. However, when his gaze fell on Yunxing, Lan and the others, it was somewhat sharp. Lan, your luck is not good this time. You have to lead this group of child soldiers. If it were me and Lu Tongtian, this divine artifact mission would have been a cinch. His words were very arrogant. Earlier, Second Prince Li Xiao had wanted to use his identity as a student of the elite magician camp to propose to the Grand Elder that Tang Yuan and the elite magician camp form an alliance. Who knew that the Grand Elder, that old fart, would turn him down immediately? What made Li Xiao even angrier was that the Grand Elder actually formed an alliance with later Qin. This was clearly a slap in his face. Li Xiao was narrow-minded. After failing to form an alliance, he returned to Tang Yuan and prepared his own personal team of magicians. His purpose was to defeat the elite magicians of the continent in one fell swoop during the search for the divine artifact. Blue frowned and glanced at the magicians behind Li Xiao. The magicians behind him attracted Yunsheng's attention. Among them was Kuling, who had been kicked out of the elite magician camp by Yunsheng. After Kuling left the elite magician camp, there was no news of her. Yunsheng thought that she would never meet her again. She did not expect that the two of them would meet again during the divine artifact mission. Li Xiao, you have no right to judge my team members. In the eyes of others, you are a prince, but in my eyes, you are worthless. You went behind the back of the elders and took the initiative to rope in the elite magician camp. This matter, after I complete the mission, I will settle the score with you. Lan was usually cold, but at this juncture he was very protective of his junior brothers and sisters. Lan, in the elite magician camp, I gave in to you because of the Grand Elder. These people are all ostracized by the mainland's elite camp. They already belong to Tang Yuan. In the ruins we won't be merciful. Li Xiao completely disregarded the camaraderie of his fellow disciples and completely fell out with Lan. Chapter 797. Second Prince, why bother with these lowly people? Yunxing, don't think I left the elite camp because I'm afraid of you. I have another identity, I'm from the Ku family of Tang Yuan. Kuling said arrogantly. The Ku family of Tang Yuan was a magician family under the second prince, Li Xiao. They were good at bribery and assassinations and had a bad reputation in Tang Yuan. Li Xiao was ambitious. On one hand he had a good relationship with the temple, but on the other hand he joined the elite camp. When Li Xiao joined the elite camp, he initially wanted to use his identity as the second prince to become the disciple of the Dark Gold Mentor. Unfortunately, the Dark Gold Mentor was not afraid of power. After she tested Li Xiao, she concluded that Li Xiao had bad intentions and that learning dark magic would only lead him astray, so she rejected Li Xiao. Li Xiao had always held a grudge against her. However, he had always coveted the dark magic of the Dark Gold Mentor, especially the celestial meditation. Therefore he looked for suitable candidates from the major families under his command, and then mixed them into the elite camp. He found out that the Dark Gold Mentor's parents died early, and she was an orphan. Therefore, after finding Kuling, who had part of the dark magic soul, he let her enter the elite camp as an orphan. Kuling had hidden her strength well. She made the Dark Gold Mentors think that she was an orphan, so they sympathized with her. That was how she became a Dark Gold Mentor student. After Kuling became the disciple of the Dark Gold Mentor, in order to obtain the exclusive magic of the Dark Gold Mentor, she used unscrupulous means to harm her fellow disciples. She even used a lot of money to assassinate those who got in her way. Unfortunately, just when the second prince and Kuling thought that the plan they had worked so hard on for so many years was finally going to succeed, Yunxing entered the mainland's magic elite camp. Once she appeared, she quickly won the favor of the Dark Gold Mentor, who passed on the celestial meditation to her. Not only that, Yunxing also saw through Kuling's schemes many times. In the end, Kuling's ugly face was exposed and she was kicked out of the elite camp. Kuling had no choice but to return to Tang Yuan. However, even though Kuling had failed her mission, she had studied under a Dark Gold Mentor for many years and had learned a lot of dark magic. Her own strength had already reached the level of a sky mage. That was why Li Xiao had chosen her when he was selecting members. As for the other magicians behind Li Xiao, Yunxing also recognized a few of them. They were all senior brothers and sisters from the continent's elite magician camp. This time, the Great Elder had eliminated the objections of the masses and selected the candidates to participate in the search for the divine artifact. Those students who had failed to be selected could not help but feel resentful. Li Xiao was ambitious. He took advantage of this opportunity to secretly rope in many sorcerers with promises of official positions and large sums of money. Those people had now all defected to the Tangyuan kingdom. Yun Xing, you don't deserve to represent the continent's magic elite camp. Just you wait and see. That blind dark gold woman will pay for her actions one day. Seeing that Yun Xing and the others didn't retaliate, Keling became even more unscrupulous and insulted the dark gold instructor. Little did she know that her words and actions had already angered Yun Sheng. Insulting the people of the dark gold instructor was equivalent to insulting Yun Sheng. Yun Sheng smiled coldly, staring at Keling with a pair of cold eyes. She quietly used the corpse puppet technique. Keling, say it again. While speaking, Yun Sheng's black eyes flashed with a golden light. Her lips moved slightly. I'll say it, dark gold instructor. Keling said enthusiastically, but suddenly her tongue stuttered. I'm a bitch, a spy for Tangyuan. I infiltrated the continent's magic elite camp to steal dark magic. I also secretly bribed assassins to assassinate those students who were more outstanding than me. All of this was instigated by the second prince, Li Xiao. Li Xiao, who had been watching the show from the side, the smile on his face froze. Keling, what nonsense are you talking about? Keling's mouth didn't stop talking. Li Xiao is not a good person. He has always been jealous of Sister Lan's talent. He even tried to sow discord between Lu Tongtian and Sister Lan. When the people on the side heard this, there was an uproar. Li Xiao's reputation on the continent had always been good. He was known for being a modest gentleman. Who would have thought that he was such a two-faced person? The crowd, who originally had some respect for Li Xiao, now looked at Li Xiao with disdain. This made Li Xiao feel like he was sitting on pins and needles. He flew into a rage out of humiliation and rushed forward. Keling, you're crazy. Li Xiao was unable to restrain his anger. He gave Keling a few slaps. After 2 slaps, Keling's face was swollen. Keling was awakened by the slaps. She remembered what she said just now and knelt on the ground in fright. She kept kowtowing and begging for mercy. Second prince, it's not me, it has nothing to do with me. It's Yun Sheng. Keling suddenly stopped kowtowing. Her mouth started to talk nonsense again. The second prince told me that when we enter the Taiyuan ruins, we must find a way to secretly harm others. He also prepared some magic beast's amniotic fluid and planned to mix it with everyone's food. When these words came out, everyone was angry and stared at Li Xiao. Several warriors from later Qin and Zhou state were already angry. They were about to step forward and fight with Li Xiao. Bitch, shut up. Li Xiao did not expect that before he could carry out his evil plan, Keling had ruined it. His eyes were red with anger. He rushed forward and tried to cover Keling's mouth. Who would have thought that Keling would suddenly go crazy? She grabbed Li Xiao's hand and bit it, refusing to let go. The people Li Xiao brought hurried forward. It took a Herculean effort to separate Li Xiao and Keling. They were separated, but Li Xiao's hand was bitten off a piece of flesh from Keling's hand. How could Li Xiao not know that Keling suddenly went crazy? It must be Yun Sheng's doing. Li Xiao immediately ordered his men to tie Keling up and gag her. Although Keling was taken away, everyone looked at Li Xiao in a different way. Li Xiao had not yet entered the Taiyuan ruins, but he had already made countless enemies for himself. It was really a self-inflicted evil. Seeing this, Li Xiao was even more annoyed. He attributed Keling's abnormal behavior to Yun Sheng. Yun Sheng, it must be you. You secretly played tricks. Li Xiao brought Keling here because he wanted to use her to deal with Yun Sheng. He wanted to use Keling to deal with Yun Sheng. Who would have thought that he would go for wool and come home shorn? Instead he was used by Yun Sheng. Haha, it's really funny. There are hundreds of people here. Everyone saw clearly that I did not even move a finger. How can it be my doing? Yun Sheng sneered. Li Xiao was a wolf in sheep's clothing. If she did not teach him a lesson, she would not be Yun Sheng. Don't try to quibble. You slandered I. Today I will not let it go. Li Xiao was speechless. He was even more embarrassed. He waved his hand and dozens of Tangyuan magicians behind him rushed forward. Dozens of magic scepters were aimed at Yun Sheng. Chapter 798. What? Do you really want to be enemies with the elite camp? The consequences of being enemies with the elite camp are not something you can bear. Azura coldly looked at the magicians. As long as Yun Xing was in her team, Li Xiao wouldn't be able to touch a single hair on her head. Azura's body emitted a cold magic fluctuation, and the ground under her feet immediately formed a thin layer of ice. Behind Li Xiao, the traitorous magicians from the elite camp were shocked by her aura and didn't dare to move for a moment. Bastards, you are now my magicians. How dare you not listen to Ai's orders? Li Xiao was furious. Li Xiao had brought dozens of magicians and warriors with him, and the elite camp only had 5 people. No matter how powerful Azura and the others were, it was impossible to resist the attack of dozens of magic scepters. Oh, Second Prince, are you trying to bully us with your numbers? Or do you think that the people from the elite camp are all dead? Yi Baiming lazily said. Before his voice fell, the warriors behind him all released their Do Qi. The task of searching for the artifact was said to be led by the elite camp. The elite camp was being bullied. The little wildcat was being bullied. It was the same as the elite camp being bullied. It was the same as Yi Baiming being bullied. Huoyu leads the fire elves and swears to protect Lady Yun Sheng. Behind Huoyu, rows of elven magic bows and arrows were raised. Dozens of elven archers unceremoniously aimed at Li Xiao with their magic sealing bows. As a result, the previously hesitant magicians of Tang Yuan didn't dare to make a move. How can this prince not be involved in something like bullying others with numbers? The later Qin and the elite camps of the continent have already formed an alliance. Second Prince, you should calm down. Duguxiu's eagle eyes were cold. He wasn't angry, but he was powerful. Rows of blood iron guards surrounded Tang Yuan's magicians like a wall. Whoever dares to touch my third sister will be the enemy of the entire Skywing city. Tian Yu's face was cold. The people behind him also pulled out their weapons. Also the enemy of my everlasting chamber of commerce. Zhou Qingchuan added in a timely manner. Bullying the few with numbers, it was indeed bullying the few with numbers. In an instant he, the second prince of Tang Yuan, became the one who was bullied. Li Xiao suddenly felt his whole body turn cold. Good Yun Sheng. When one person was bullied, support came from everywhere. Even Li Xiao did not dare to offend Yun Sheng at this moment. However, if Li Xiao were to admit defeat now, he would appear even more cowardly. How would he be able to establish himself in the magic world of the continent in the future? Behind Li Xiao, the magicians had already put down their magic scepters in fear, but Li Xiao was still glaring at Yun Sheng. In his opinion, Yun Sheng was the cause of his predicament. As Li Xiao held the magic scepter in his hand, he felt a chill run down his spine. The magic scepter in his hand felt as if it weighed a ton. At this time, only the Zhou State and the Hunters Guild, as well as the coalition forces of Penglai and Dihong City, did not rashly intervene. Although they didn't make a move, they all realized that a seemingly ordinary student from the continent's elite camp actually had so many people protecting him. The situation was so urgent that even Elder Hellion did not know what to do. At this moment, there was a wave of magic and a teleportation magic array appeared. In the teleportation magic array, the people from the temple appeared under the lead of Xia Wenshu and Ru Yi. When he saw Xia Wenshu, the originally nervous Li Xiao relaxed. It was as if he had seen his savior, and he went forward to greet him. The temple was originally located in Tangyuan. The second prince, Li Xiao, had studied magic in the main temple of the temple in his early years and had some friendship with Xia Wenshu. He thought that Xia Wenshu's appearance would be of more help. Moreover, Xia Wenshu was quite knowledgeable in the field of illusions. He would definitely be able to see through Yun Sheng's tricks. Brother Xia, it's good that you're here. This woman used illusions to slander I. Xia Wenshu's gaze first landed on Yun Sheng's side, then on Kuling. I didn't see any illusions on her. He looked very normal and did not have any extra emotions. However, if one looked closely, they would see that Xia Wenshu's hands were clenched tightly under his magic robe. Second prince, forget it. It's better to bury the hatchet. You know senior brother's personality the best. He doesn't like to participate in such disputes. Since everyone is here, it's about time to enter the Taiyuan ruins. Besides Xia Wenshu, Ru Yi shook his head. He was very disdainful of Li Xiao's actions. You're really stupid. Can't you see that senior brother can't be bothered with you? Ru Yi's words gave Li Xiao a way out. Thus, Li Xiao did not say anything else and retreated to the side. However, he still glared at Yun Sheng and Lan with venomous eyes. Elder Hellion walked forward. Xia Siming, you're here today? Elder, don't worry. I'm only here on behalf of Master. I'm only in charge of supervising the battle and treating the injured. I won't be entering the Taiyuan ruins. Xia Wenshu's words made Elder Hellion sigh in relief. The other major factions had the same reaction. With Xia Wenshu's law overlord Cultivation, Ru Yi, and the help of the Starry Sky Magic Array, if he wanted to enter the Taiyuan ruins, there would be no suspense to this divine artifact search mission. Sure enough, Xia Wenshu was also wary of the forbidden legends of the Taiyuan ruins, so he gave up on entering the Taiyuan ruins. Ru Yi was the representative of the Law Temple to enter the Taiyuan ruins. Xia Wenshu's arrival meant that everyone participating in this divine artifact search mission had arrived. Everyone, I believe that everyone has only heard rumors about the Taiyuan ruins, so we've already found the village chief of the fishing village to tell everyone the truth about the Taiyuan ruins. Xia Wenshu was very thoughtful. Before everyone entered the ruins, he first called the village chief over. The fishing village had existed beside the Taiyuan ruins for nearly 100 years. Although the fishermen in the village had never entered the ruins before, they knew more about the Taiyuan ruins than Yun Sheng and the others, who were here for the first time. The village chief's face was filled with fear. Fortunately, Xia Wenshu appeared to be very friendly, so the village chief calmed down. The village chief brought everyone to the foot of Mt Taiyuan, where they looked at the Taiyuan ruins on the summit. Everyone, there is only one path to enter the Taiyuan ruins, and that is the sea sky line that leads to the summit. The sea sky line is very steep, so you must be very careful when walking. Just follow this path and you'll reach Taiyuan City. However, once you enter Taiyuan City, there is one thing you must be very careful about. You should have seen that purple cloud at the summit, right? Following the village chief's instructions, everyone looked up the mountain. Looking past the trees and mountains, they could vaguely make out an ancient city at the summit of the mountain. Earlier, through the Starry Sky Magic Array, everyone only got a rough idea of what was going on, but now they noticed that there was a huge purple cloud that covered almost the entire summit. The purple cloud shrouded the summit of Taiyuan City, which was directly above the Taiyuan ruins. Chapter 799. It was not strange for there to be clouds in the sky. However, it was strange for such a strange purple cloud to appear in such a coastal area. It was a sunny day and the sea breeze was strong. Under such circumstances, there should be no clouds in the sky. However, the purple cloud did not move at all. It was like a magical beast hovering above the Taiyuan ruins. Just by looking at it from afar, everyone knew that the cloud was not to be underestimated. Sir, that is the Dragon King Cloud, the guardian of the Taiyuan ruins. Those evil people who want to enter the Taiyuan ruins will be killed by that thunder cloud, the village chief said respectfully. These fishermen who lived by the sea did not know anything about magic or combat energy. To them, the most powerful thing was the Dragon King, who symbolized good weather. According to the village chief, that purple cloud would shoot out lightning every half a month. Once the lightning was shot out, the sea would be filled with thunder and lightning, making it difficult for fishing boats to go out to sea. However, after the lightning, the sea would be peaceful for a period of time. This pattern was so accurate that the fishermen called the purple cloud the Dragon King Cloud. It's just a purple cloud with relatively lush lightning magic elements. Why are they being so secretive? A mage muttered after hearing this. However, when the village chief heard that, he immediately became nervous. Sir, you can't say such things. That is really the Dragon King Cloud. A few years ago, there was a villager who saw a dragon appear in the purple cloud on a night of thunder and lightning. Dragon? The group of magicians and martial artists didn't really believe it. Magical beasts like dragons had long been extinct in the boundless world. How could there be a cloud in the Taiyuan ruins? Everyone was skeptical about the village chief's words and did not take it to heart. Thereafter, the people from the various forces questioned the village chief about the situation of Mount Taiyuan. The village chief told everyone that Mount Taiyuan was like spring all year round. However, the villagers did not dare to offend the Dragon King, so they had not entered the mountain for many years. It was like spring all year round on the mountain. There were various herbs and some magical beasts growing there. As for any magical weapons or treasures, the villagers did not know anything about them. However, even if there is a treasure, it should be hidden in the city lord's mansion. The village chief remembered something. A few years ago in the fishing village, a child entered the Taiyuan ruins. After that child got lost, he walked all the way to the deepest part of the ruins. It was said that at the top of the mountain he saw a collapsed white castle. Inside the castle, all kinds of treasures were piled up. After the child went down the mountain, he told the adults at the foot of the mountain about this matter. However, when the fishermen gathered their courage and prepared to enter the mountain to search for treasure, the purple cloud suddenly struck down many lightning bolts, killing many villagers. The villagers no longer dared to go up the mountain. In that case, the goal of our trip is that White Castle. Xia Wenshu thanked the village chief after hearing this. Taiyuan Mountain was huge and the Taiyuan ruins were not small either. The sooner they locked onto a target, the easier it would be for them to complete the mission. Moreover, the words of the village chief just now gave everyone some hope. Previously, it was said that anyone who entered the Taiyuan ruins would never return. However, now that the village chief had said that even a child could successfully escape, it proved that the Taiyuan ruins were not as they had said before. After entering, there was no way to leave alive. Looking around, Xia Wenshu said, "There is only one way into the mountain. It is best if there are not too many people going in. A team of 20 people is best." No one had any objections to Xia Wenshu's suggestion. If there were too many people, it might not be safe. On the contrary, it would delay the journey. The remaining people could set up camp at the foot of the mountain. This time, there were no more disputes between the mainland's elite camp and Duguxiu. The elite camp only had 10 people in total. Duguxiu chose Madame Qi Bai and 8 other martial artists to accompany him. The other forces also selected 20 people respectively. After everything was ready, the major factions entered the mountain one by one. Everyone left one by one. When almost everyone had left, Yun Xing walked past Xia Wenshu. "Miss Yun," Xia Wenshu suddenly said. "Xia Siming, congratulations on your breakthrough." Yun Xing stopped and smiled brightly. Her bright smile made Xia Wenshu absent-minded for a moment. Yi Baiming, who was standing to the side, coughed a few times in displeasure. He muttered in his heart, "Damned little wild cat. She looks so fierce when she sees this prince, but smiles so brightly when she sees Xia Wenshu. I have something to tell you. It's about Uncle Yun." Xia Wenshu deliberately wanted to speak with Yun Sheng alone. Ever since they parted ways in Skywing City, Yun Sheng had not seen her father again. She had been worried about whether or not her father had found her mother. Hearing Xia Wenshu say this, she walked to the side with him. "My father went to find you?" Yun Xing did not know when her father had met Xia Wenshu. He came to ask about the heart crystal. Xia Wenshu roughly explained how Yun Songhai had come to find him earlier. He also told Yun Sheng that Hu Jiuxing was most likely under the control of the heart crystal. "If I'm not wrong, Uncle Yun might go to the Zhao state to inquire about the heart lamp." Xia Wenshu looked at Yun Sheng with a worried expression. The latter seemed to be deep in thought. Another 8 Barons divine artifact. After hearing about the heart crystal, Yun Sheng sighed. If it really involved the 8 Barons divine artifact, then her father might not be able to help her mother recover in a short time. However, Yun Sheng thought again. If the heart lamp was the heart sorrow divine artifact unearthed in the Taiyuan ruins, then her mother would be saved. Many thanks to Xia Siming for telling me these things. I will definitely repay you in the future. Including Yun Songhai this time, Xia Wenshu had already saved her many times. With Yun Sheng's personality, she did not like to owe people favors. She secretly thought that for Xia Wenshu's sake, she would be merciful to the people from the temple in the Taiyuan ruins this time. Yi Baiming was still waiting 100 meters away. Because Xia Wenshu had used a restriction while the two of them were talking, Yi Baiming could not hear a single word. This arrogant prince did not have a good expression on his face. It was as if someone owed him 100 million purple coins. "Here's a magic tool. Take it with you. Perhaps it will be of some help in the Taiyuan ruins." Xia Wenshu dismissed Yun Sheng's gratitude with a smile. He gave Yun Sheng a light magic tool. When the people from the temple, including Ru Yi, saw Xia Wenshu's actions, they all looked at Yun Sheng with envy. Only a small portion of the people from the temple could create magic tools. Especially the magic tools personally created by Xia Wenshu, who was the young master of the temple, were the rarest. The magic tools he created were at least at the level of holy magic tools. A portion of his light magic power was stored in them. It was rare for senior brother Xia to care about someone. Yun Xing thanked Xia Wenshu and accepted the light magic tool. "You, take care," Xia Wenshu said in a low voice. Chapter 800. Xia Siming, you don't have to worry. I will protect my woman well. Yi Baiming couldn't stand it any longer and stepped forward. He waved his hand and his powerful fighting aura struck the isolation magic array like a whip. The magic array shattered. Xia Wenshu's expression changed, and the smile on his face disappeared. Yi Baiming had already pulled Yun Sheng away. The temperature around the person who was originally as warm as the sun suddenly dropped by a few degrees. A piercingly cold, murderous intent invisibly pervaded the air. Senior brother, we're leaving too. Rui hurried forward. He noticed that his senior brother was a little different from usual today. However, this kind of senior brother was more like a human. Rui had lived with Xiao Wenshu since he was young. His senior brother's appearance and temperament were top-notch. He was talented and knowledgeable. He had always been respected in the temple. This made Rui feel that his senior brother was inhumanly perfect. The only flaw was that he was too perfect. He took care of everything. He didn't get angry nor did he get happy. However, his senior brother was a little different today. He actually got angry. Rui, after entering the Taiyuan ruins you have to be careful. Remember, no matter what the situation is, you can't lose yourself. Xiao Wenshu knew that he had lost his composure, and his face was slightly red. He seemed to be staring at the two figures in front of him, one tall and one short, as they gradually walked away. He only felt that the two figures were especially glaring. Rui nodded, then left with the group. After everyone left, Xiao Wenshu felt a burst of uneasiness. He thought for a moment, then divined. This. Xiao Wenshu's eyebrows twitched on his gentle face. This divination was actually a sign of great misfortune. Xiao Wenshu couldn't help but raise his head and look at the Taiyuan ruins at the peak of the mountain. In the sky, the purple clouds that hovered motionlessly like a ferocious beast were getting darker and darker. It seemed like something would break out of the clouds at any time. The Taiyuan ruins were built on the peak of Taiyuan Mountain. The mountain was 5,000 meters high and there was only one path to the peak. After entering the mountain pass, one had to pass through a small forest path that was about 5 to 6 miles long. Further up the path was the sea and sky line, which spiraled up the cliff. This mountain path was several hundred miles long, winding and winding. From high up in the sky, it looked like a silver-white python lurking in the vast forest. Back then, in order to avoid the Zhao state troops, the Taiyuan deliberately built this plank road to be narrow and dangerous. The plank road could barely fit half a person, and it was also difficult for carriages, horses, and ordinary animals to pass through. Therefore, hundreds of years ago, it was called the line between the sea and the sky by the seaside fishermen. The sea and sky line was several hundred miles long. Because it was close to the sea, there would be strong sea winds blowing from time to time. If one was not careful, they would fall into the sea. Yun Sheng and Xiao Wenshu arrived a little later than the first team because they had spoken a few more words with Xiao Wenshu. When they arrived, Sister Lan, abandoned Dugu Xiu, and the others were still waiting at the entrance of the mountain. Madame Chi Bai's expression was unsightly. So slow. We're here to find the artifact, not to go on an outing. The figures of the 6 great powers in front of them had already disappeared. Although they had already entered Taiyuan Mountain, the surrounding scenery was no different from ordinary mountain ridges. At this time of the year, birds were singing and flowers were fragrant everywhere. Yunxing raised her head to look. Trees with straight trunks and lush foliage grew on both sides. Unknown small wild fruits that were as red as flames grew under the trees. The scenery was very enchanting. From time to time, colorful birds flew through the forest. If they didn't have a mission, it really would be a good place to go on an outing. No one forced you to wait. Lan didn't like Madame Chi Bai at first sight. This woman always exuded a devilish aura. She reminded Lan of the celestial fox peoples who Linglong. Since we're allies, we should advance and retreat together. Everyone's here. Arrange the order and enter the mountain. Dugu Xiu gloomily glanced at Yun Sheng and Yi Baiming holding hands. After another 2 to 3 li they would reach the horizon. The crown prince's body is priceless. You should walk in the middle. You should send a few people to walk in front. Madame Chi Bai acted like the mistress of the house, her face full of arrogance. The ruins of Taiyuan Mountain were extremely dangerous. Ahead was an unknown danger. Walking in front meant that their lives could be in danger at any time. At present there were only 10 people on each side. No one was willing to let their people die first. Here everyone is equal. His life is a life and our lives are also a life. Lan was dissatisfied. She hated dealing with this kind of royal child the most. Li Xiao was like this and so was Dugu Xiu. If it weren't for her master repeatedly reminding her when she left the camp, she would have turned around and left. Sister Lan, Crown Prince Dugu, don't argue anymore. If this continues, the people in front will reach the top of the mountain. How about this? I suggest that the women walk in the middle, and the remaining warriors and magicians. The magicians will be at the back and the warriors will be at the front. Yi Baiming looked ahead. It had already been 15 minutes since the great powers left. Okay. Lan and Duguxiu had no objections. The 20 people quickly adjusted their formation. With one in front and one at the back, they walked towards the only path leading to the top of the mountain, the horizon. At the intersection of the horizon, Tang Yuan's dozens of magicians and warriors had already arrived. Li Xiao had been humiliated at the foot of the mountain earlier, so he secretly hated it. He vowed to find the artifact and teach Yun Xing, Lan, and the others a lesson. Because Tang Yuan had the most magicians among all the powers, as soon as Li Xiao entered the mountain, he ordered all the magicians to use wind magic and speed up their movements, rushing to be at the front. Second Prince, the horizon is just ahead. Although they had heard of the ominous reputation of the horizon, after seeing it with their own eyes, Tang Yuan and the others couldn't help but feel some stage fright. The horizon was a very narrow mountain path. On one side was a steep mountain wall, and on the other side was the ocean. The entire path was said to be several hundred li long. Here even magic couldn't be used. It was said that it would take more than 6 hours for an ordinary person to walk through this mountain path. Because it could only accommodate half a person, if one wanted to pass through this mountain path, they had to lean their body close to the mountain wall and hold the wall with both hands, like a crab crawling sideways. The most frightening thing was that after the mountain was higher, the sea breeze also became stronger, and the sound of the wind was incessant. Looking down at the bottom of the cliff, all he could see was darkness. Vaguely, he could see stone pillars that were as sharp as knives standing on the surface of the sea. When everyone saw this, the soles of their feet turned cold and their knees went weak. The mountain path started at 1,000 meters and stopped at 4,000 meters. If they were careless and were swept into the sea by the wind, even if they had magic wings and doqi wings, they could be blown away by the sea breeze and fall to pieces. Seeing such a dangerous place, Tang Yuan's people hesitated for a moment. No one wanted to be the first to pass through. Cowering, the people behind are about to catch up. Wang Qingyu, come out and be the first to pass. Li Xiao saw his subordinate's cowering appearance and was full of anger. Chapter 801. The second prince, Li Xiao, pointed at one person and ordered him to pass. The sky and sea line. The wind-type sky sorcerer called Wang Qin was the most agile among the group. Wang Qin braced himself and walked forward step by step with his hands pressed against the mountain wall. He was very careful with every step. He walked for about a mile and everything was normal. The rest of you follow me one by one. Li Xiao saw this and walked in the middle, letting the others follow him one by one. Li Xiao and the others had just walked a few steps when they heard a scream in front of them. Everyone looked up and saw the magic scepter in Wang Chen's hand being blown by the wind. He seemed to be possessed and lost his footing and fell down the mountain path. When he fell, he didn't even use basic protection spells. He fell like a falling leaf. He smashed into a stone pillar and his body went through it. It was a terrifying sight. Wang Cheng had just fallen off the cliff when 3 or 4 of the people walking at the front also fell off the cliff as if they had bumped into a ghost. Their deaths were very tragic. Li Xiao felt as if his liver and guts were about to split open, and he almost stepped on air. Retreat, everyone retreat. One Wang Qin was easy to explain, but 3 or 4 people in a row, regardless of whether they were sorcerers or warriors, all died the same way. Li Xiao was also scared out of his wits. He panicked and asked everyone to retreat. When they retreated, everyone's faces were pale. Second Prince, 4 of us are dead. Kuling's face was pale as she counted the number of people. Out of 20 people, 4 had died before they even entered the ruins. It was really a bad start. Bad luck. If I knew this would happen, I would have let the other forces go first. Li Xiao managed to calm himself down. Second Prince, it seems a little strange. When we reached the plank path just now, I felt like my mind was blank and I couldn't remember any spells. A sorcerer shivered. The others nodded in agreement. When they reached the plank path just now, they were all in a daze. Just as Li Xiao and the others were panicking and didn't know what to do, the people from Dihong City and Zhao State who followed closely behind Li Xiao also rushed over. Second Prince, why haven't you passed through yet? A summoner from Zhao State walked out. You can't walk on that mountain path. Li Xiao still hadn't recovered from the earlier incident. His face was full of panic and his usual carefree calmness was all gone. Haha, everyone says that Tang Yuan's magicians are powerful. Today I see that they are just SOSO. They can't even pass through a small plank road. Then we'll go first, the Zhao State's people jeered. That being said, Tang Yuan's experience had taught the people of the Zhao State a lesson. After some discussion, they decided to use a safer method. A summoner began chanting. A summoning circle flashing with magic light appeared. Soon, a rank 8 white-headed eagle flew out from the summoning circle. This type of white-headed eagle would appear in the high and cold snowy mountains all year round. It could withstand the biting cold wind and had a strong sense of direction. It could ride 2 to 3 people at a time. It turned out that the Zhao state had come prepared this time. Among the magicians, several of them had medium-sized flying magic beasts. Li Xiao cursed inwardly. Encountering a summoner with a flying magical beast while searching for a divine artifact is really bad luck. The white-headed eagle circled in the air a few times before landing steadily. A summoner with a flying magical beast would have a natural advantage when traversing such a dangerous terrain. As soon as the white-headed eagle came out, 2 summoners rode on it. 2 people and 1 eagle flew in the direction of the sea and the sky. The sea breeze was still biting cold, but the white-headed eagle, which was like a small plane, spread its 2-meter-long wings and tore the sea breeze apart. It glided hundreds of meters away. Tang Yuan and the others were envious and jealous. Li Xiao really wished that they had brought a few flying magic beasts with them. But flying magic beasts alone were not enough. Without a summoner, everything was just empty talk. However, only the Zhao state and their allies, Dihong City, could use this method to cross the sea and the sky. Later, the other forces would be blocked outside the sea and the sky just like Tang Yuan. This time, the divine artifact would fall into the hands of the Zhao state. The people of the Zhao state and Dihong City all looked proud. Extreme joy and extreme sorrow. In the sky, the white-headed eagle, which was originally fine, let out a sorrowful cry. It suddenly changed its flying direction and crashed into the side of the mountain. Ah! The 2 summoners riding on the back of the white-headed eagle were caught off guard. They fell into the raging sea with the white-headed eagle. 2 more died. The people of the Zhao state and Dihong City were speechless for a moment. Now no one dared to say anything and no one dared to cross the sea and the sky. When the mainland magic elite camp and the people of the later Qin arrived at the sea and the sky, they thought that the other forces had already passed. Who knew that everyone was still waiting at the sea and the sky? I think everyone can go back now. If we can't even cross this plank road, how can we enter the Taiyuan ruins? Qing Bai and the others were the 4th batch to arrive. Before that, Huoyu and the others had also arrived. Huoyu refused to believe the words of the humans and sent an elf archer to scout the way. The result was the same as the result of Tang Yuan and the people of the temple. The elf archer went crazy halfway and almost fell into the sea. Luckily, Huoyu reacted quickly and pulled the elf archer back at the last moment, saving the elf archer's life. The elf archer's life was saved, but after he was rescued, he kept talking nonsense like he was in a dream. He was dizzy. Huoyu was also helpless. When Qing Bai and the others arrived, they decided not to try. The situation was in a stalemate. Although no one could cross the sea and the sky, no one was willing to go down the mountain. When Yun Sheng and the others arrived, they were met with this situation. Lan Yu and Dugu Xiu asked around, but they didn't know what to do either. It was already late and no one was willing to go down the mountain. After some discussion, they decided to rest at the entrance of the sea and the sky for the night, like the other forces. That night, more than 100 people set up camp in their respective camps. The wind was strong by the sea and the sound of the waves was endless. That night, no one slept well. The next day another day passed. No one had any idea what to do. A summoner from the Zhao state summoned another flying beast. This time it was a small soaring skylark. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the soaring skylark let out a squeak as if it was flying, and plunged into the raging waves below the cliff. We can't go on like this. The people from the Zhao state were the first to lose their patience. Normally, these summoners were the most arrogant, but they relied on magical beasts the most. Their true abilities were inferior to magicians and warriors. Seeing that they couldn't cross the sea and the sky, the people from the Zhao state went down the mountain that afternoon. Seeing their allies leave, the people from the Hong Emperor city couldn't help but follow them down the mountain. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.